And now, what's going on, everybody? Welcome. And as you can see, I've got an Avengers tier crew with us. So, of course, you all know me as Zimzilla. But on my right, I actually have a new and upcoming kaiju creator. Say hello.
Hello, I am KaijuKim. I recently started putting out kaiju videos on my channel every Tuesday, so I'm currently reviewing the Gamma Rod trilogy, so if you're interested in that, check it out.
Yes.
And of course, we love our diversity, and it's great to have more female creators in the community. So, thank you for coming on board and saying yes. And then we have beside her the Skadux man. Say hello.
Yep. I'm Jacob. I don't have a YouTube channel, and I only exist in the realm of G-Fest.
Yeah, but that's what matters, though. The G-Fest is always a good time. And then below me, he's got 4 arms. He's got a tusk and a trunk, but he's definitely not a behemoth ripoff. It is Ian. Say hello, my man.
Hey, everybody. It's the Kaiju Universe. I don't make YouTube videos. I'm not that talented. I just post dumb crap on Instagram. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. But you did do something good, which is you got a bunch of kaiju writers and stuff for all of that for the monster stories. So that is something.
Yes, the KWC ripoff. Yeah, Monster Battle Stories. Check us out on Wattpad. If you just type in Monster Battle Stories, you should find us.
And then beside him, he's looking nice. He does his YouTube content. It is KaiMo Films.
Howdy. I do stop motion animations on occasion. Unfortunately, they take forever to make. So don't expect any frequent uploads. That's probably not the greatest promo I could cut for myself, but whatever.
Well, considering I didn't even upload anything besides from the stream, so like it's kind of just how it is, especially with college on the way. And then lastly, he is Godzilla. He is Eric, 1999. He's got his Kanagon picture on here for a certain topic. Say hello, my man.
Yeah. What good? Eric Zilla here. And, I kind of just do a lot of Godzilla, tokusatsu content. Currently working on a fan series. If you guys want to check that out, check it out.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I also do drawings. So. Yeah,
you're as well as you also have your own kaiju series as well. Actually, you have several. I think
about it. I have a lot. I don't even know. I'm not even keeping track anymore. But yeah, I make comics as well as a hobby and stuff. So good. And I'm glad to be here with my boy Zim. And yeah.
And speaking of comics, the first thing we're going to be discussing tonight, the kind of two-part of this big stream, as we know, we're starting off a little earlier than usual, and that is the Ultraman comic. And anyone else who has the comic, what versions do y'all have in terms of the covers? Because there's obviously several variant covers they came out with.
Hang on, let me get it.
Kim has the Flexing have 2, and actually the one I ended up wanting was the Spider-Man one. I really wanted that one out of all of them.
Here you go. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, you're KaiMo. We bully weaves. We bully weaves on the stream, KaiMo. Get out of here with that.
Anime trilogy for life.
Blame my fiance. He got both of these for me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I really wanted the Spider-Man one because the Spider-Man one looked really cool. And then yesterday, I gotten the blank cover one because that's the one where you could draw your own cover, and I was going to put that as an Instagram post. But I'm like, I have to justify drawing the thing again. I don't think I could justify buying the comic again just to draw on it because I could just attach that to this comic here. But actually, I do want to quickly highlight what Steven says. If I want to, I can get back into draw cover with Ultraman and my character Kayata, who is part of the Kaiju Versus, might I add. But in terms of the comic, for everyone who has seen it, if we're just giving a preliminary score out of 5, what would y'all give it?
Are we going in order, or do we just kind of
up? Just
that's what I was kind of.
And actually, we'll just do ladies first. So Kim, you get to get the spotlight.
All right, ladies first then.
Fantastic. Out of 5, I guess I would give it like 4.
That's fair. And I would say following that, Jacob.
Jacob,
you haven't seen it, so.
Seen it yet. So.
And then I would say Ian.
I also have not gotten it yet.
Dang it.
But I should definitely change that.
And
I
that
mean,
would
it's
be
a big ripoff of Ben 10, but I'll let
yeah,
that
we
go.
all know that Ultraman
yeah.
is a ripoff of Ben 10, guys, of course.
Bruh.
Which, for everyone who doesn't know, after the Ultraman comic got announced on YouTube, there was a bunch of people in the comments saying that looks like Marvel is ripping off Ben 10. So that's
Listen, I didn't even grow up with Ultraman. Even I know that that is incorrect.
What do you
it's,
mean?
it's really bad sometimes because people were like, "Wow, Marvel's so unoriginal," and I'm like, "Oh no!" But then
Wasn't there a
what's even
Screen Rant article
Yeah, I was
saying
just
that
about to
Marvel's
say that.
trying to be like encroach on Pacific Rim's
Yeah,
territory now?
Screen Rant said that that Marvel's Ultraman is their take on Pacific Rim.
Anyway,
Even worse.
I've only heard the Wave comparison.
45.
What
It
did
was
you say,
before-
Kai?
it was- Ben 10 was before Ultraman, right? It was in 45 when that show came out.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. It predates Godzilla.
Yeah, we all know Humongous Source just is the true inspiration for Godzilla.
Yeah.
It's not even King Kong, guys. Come
yeah, Steamboat Willie and Ben 10 double feature. I was there.
on. That makes you excessively man.
Anyway, cringe aside, I apologize.
Yeah, big cringe aside. KaiMo, have you seen it as well? Because I know I definitely was gonna get you on for part of this. I'm not sure if you'd actually gotten the comic.
No, I haven't read the comic. I have read the manga though, and I would give that a solid 4 out of 5.
And then Eric's gonna have to bully you over it.
Oh yeah, I've read the comic already.
So Eric, what would you give it?
Yeah, I give it honestly a 4.5 out of 5. Yeah.
I would actually say from experience, how many people have read any of Marvel's recent work at all? Or are none of us really Marvel Comics fans in general? And this was kind of the reason why we bought it, was because it's Ultraman.
I've been told to read
I wouldn't say
Powers of X by one of my friends, which apparently is a pretty good X-Men run. But I'm not the biggest into comics. You know, like I've read the IDW stuff, and I want to start collecting the Marvel Godzilla comics. I have issue 4. I want to start like collecting those because I think those would be a cool piece. But I mean, I'm not like dying to see what the next Captain America story arc is.
And Eric, I know you were about to say something.
Yeah, I was about to say some. I myself, I don't really read too much Marvel comics, but I do read comics occasionally. Like I have a few Turok comics, and the old ones. It has Turok with a knife, and like there's like a raptor, and there's a bald guy with a helmet and stuff, and he's pointing at him. Those are one of the
that's
comics.
One of the old Valiant comics. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I also have Ren and Stimpy comics. just a couple of those, and of course some of
Man
the
of culture,
IDW comics. But
that's
about it. I mean, I like. Yeah.
Oh no. But that's about it for you.
Oh no, that was about it. You know, I don't really read too much Marvel comics.
What about you, Kim? Are you like a comic person at all, or was this really just because it was Ultraman?
Just because it was Ultraman, it's tokusatsu, which is what I'm into. So I'm like, this is cool. Why not? Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Ian, you a comic guy at all, or?
When it comes to comics specifically, I tend to lean more DC.
Oh, good man.
Comics specifically. But I have dabbled in a little bit of modern Marvel, but I definitely prefer, I want to say, like, Golden Age Marvel.
That's fair. Jacob, what about you, my man?
Yeah, the last Marvel comic I read was one of the Godzilla Marvel comics, so I'm not really big into the whole superhero comics in general. I kind of stick to tokusatsu ones. Like, most recent one was the Red Man comic that I got at G-Fest last year. Yeah.
And then I would say, like, from my own experience, there is no like recent Marvel comics I've gotten. In terms of like following Marvel, most of it's just kind of following the train wreck that is Marvel comics most of the time because of like some of the decisions not really being the best and sort of costing the company money.
Yep.
Like all like their different Captain Marvel reruns, a lot of the stuff they did with all different Marvel, just kind of not really jiving with a lot of people. But real quick, you can just say yeah if you have heard or at least seen some of it. Has anyone seen any of the Power Rangers comics by I think it was Boom?
Oh, I've read a couple.
Yeah, you've read a couple of them.
Yeah, I haven't read a lot of it though.
Gotcha.
No, I couldn't care. I could care less about Power Rangers.
Oh, really?
We're
Even
gonna fight. Like Power Rangers is great. What do you mean?
Yeah, dude.
it's still Goku, or unless you want to be like, no, Sentai is the way to go. Huh.
Oh, look at me!
No.
I know the original show. Oh,
I couldn't give a damn about those either.
Really? You're just not a Sentai guy at all?
No, a lot of what I'm interested in now is what I was shown, like what my dad would have like seen as a kid. I didn't grow up with like Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network. I grew up watching shows my dad saw as a kid, and so he like Godzilla, some of the Ultraman stuff. I mean, I didn't grow up with Ultraman, but like I wouldn't have watched Power Rangers or TMNT or any of that.
Fair enough. That's fair. What about you, Ian? Because you're the quiet one here. Have you read any of the Studios Power Rangers stuff at all?
I have not, although I would love to read. DC did a Justice League Power Rangers crossover.
Oh, really?
And that really piques my interest. I would actually love to see how they make those two universes into one cohesive story. I would actually love to read that. In terms of just Power Rangers in general, I've never been a huge Power Rangers guy. The Zords are cool though, and I'm trying to, I think there was like the Kaijun 30-day thing, like where you had to, what's your favorite Power Rangers or Super Sentai Zord? I did a little bit of research on that, and I looked up the Zords, and some of them are pretty cool, but I've never been really, really into Power Rangers.
Gotcha. The reason I bring up the Boom Studios Power Rangers story specifically is that my take on the new Ultraman comic is that it's kind of like what Boom Studios did with Power Rangers, where it's a modern reimagining of essentially the original story with crinkles of some of the later series that came out, because we're going to just kind of do a page by page overview of the comic. So you don't even have to have the comic with you to know what's going on for any of the people who are watching us or even some of the people on the podcast itself. So the comic starts off in 1966, and for everyone who would know, that is around when Ultraman, the show, as well as Ultra Q both came out.
Yep.
And we follow the USP VTOL ship, which its appearance is similar to how it was in the original Ultraman. However, who's flying it is actually different than who you'd expect. It's actually Dan Moriboshi who is flying the ship. And I'll give this one to Eric. Eric, give us a brief summarization of who Dan Moriboshi is for the Ultra series, like in general.
All right, so Dan Moriboshi is basically the host of Ultra 7 that came out in 1967, and so basically, for how Dan Moriboshi became like Ultra 7 was that at least in the show, Ultra 7 arrived on Earth and accidentally killed Dan, and then took his identity and became Dan Moriboshi. And for the show and all that, it basically it's that kind of reversal of how Ultraman was in the original show. Like, how Ultraman, he fought a bunch of monsters and occasional aliens and all that, but Ultra 7, he fought nothing mostly just aliens everywhere, and occasional like monsters and all that. And I would say that Ultra 7 is probably like kind of more popular when it comes to like special effects and visuals than Ultraman, because like Ultraman started like in his like Ultraman was in his early sort of days, but then like Ultra 7 kind of improved on what Ultraman did and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so that's why most people find Ultra 7 to be a little bit more good and all that.
That's a fair point. I will actually say in the comic itself, you can tell in certain shots that because what happens is that similar to Ultra 7, the actual show, Ultra 7 appears in a red orb and collides with the VTOL that ends up killing or nearly killing Dan. However, there is one shot where you see what appears to be just normal Ultraman, and then other shots you can see the distinct kind of shape of Ultra 7's head. However, we do know for a fact that this is indeed Ultra 7. And then we cut all the way to 2020. However, I will say that my immersion in this comic was broken because not everyone's complaining and trying to cancel each other. Not everyone's talking about the virus, and everything's kind of happy. So I would say their vision of 2020 is a little bit better than mine. But kind of just before we go too far into the comic, for the people who do have the comic, what is your opinion on the art? So I would specifically say with Kim in your case.
The art's fine. I mean, like I said, I'm not really into comic books, so I see a comic book like, oh, I can't draw like that, so I'd say it looks pretty good to me.
For the people who can draw, I know Eric can. What is your take on the art?
For a comic book, I'd say it's actually pretty good for the most part. They got the shading right. They got the monsters and characters looking, pretty good. So I'd say the art style in this comic is actually pretty well done.
Mm-hmm. And then, so we are following a female character who then goes into essentially a teleportation device, and then she comes out to the Japanese headquarters of the United Science Patrol, which I will give this over to Jacob. Jacob, describe the Science Patrol to the group here as well as to the audience.
All right, no problem. The Science Patrol, at first, it kind of was a the group in the original 66 Ultraman. The just to get everyone and the characters in the same position, but the actual organization is quite like how like the Godzilla universe handles G-Force and such, where it's a specific unit tasked with handling extraterrestrial threats or monster threats.
Yep.
In practice, it's shown as like kind of a police force with futuristic weapons for the time that always wears these orange suits with goofy helmets. And I think it's just kind of like a campy police force, really. That's the best way to describe it. They always get into situations where it's very dangerous, but they always survive. It's your basic team of a TV show.
And I would say the original term or the original title for the Science Patrol was not the United Science Patrol. It was the USSSP. What would that all entirely be for everyone who doesn't know?
The USSSP. I actually am blanking on the full name of it. It's been a while, but
Eric, can you pick up the slack for him?
All right, hold on. I mean, actually, in the top of my head, I think it does have something to do with the I think somewhere around one of the words with "you" is unidentified. It has something to do with it.
That's fair.
Special search party.
Yeah.
Right. Party. And then it's interesting that it's called that, but then they just shorten it to Science Patrol. And in this case, I think just calling it United Science Patrol just makes a whole lot more sense. But over the comics, anything that talks about the Science Patrol will always have small portions of certain information blanked out, which is for the purposes of hiding a secret that will hopefully be revealed as the series goes on. And for the people who have seen any of the Ultraman series at all, what would you say that in terms of like the sort of clandestine nature of it, would you say it's similar to that of Ultraman Nexus, or no? Because I know that was one thing a lot of people were giving it comparisons to.
I mean, when it comes down to it, I feel like it does have a bit of it, but I wouldn't say Ultraman Nexus. I would kind of say Ultraman the Next. Like, if you guys, for those who are watching who don't know, Ultraman the Next is a movie that's basically the prequel to Ultraman Nexus, and I would say that kind of fits a bit more to that instead of Ultraman Nexus, even though they both have pretty much the same sort of feel. But like, after reading the comic a couple times, you know, I've seen a bit more of the Ultraman Nexus kind of vibe. But that's just me. I mean, of course, everyone has their own sort of way of seeing this comic, you know.
And then I would say, moving past just sort of being introduced to the Science Patrol, we have this new character, Fuji, and then her commander is Muramatsu, and their whole sequence goes into this meatpacking place, and they come across the first kind of big recognizable kaiju of the series, but like not in a giant form. He's actually pretty small, and that is Teleston. So obviously, Kim, you don't have as much experience with the series. What would you say in terms of how they handled this monster? Like, do you like it? Do you like kind of feel like the atmosphere like clashes with the design in any way, or do you think they just kind of handled it the best they could?
I think they did the best they could with what what they got going on here. But yeah, I do like it. I do like the design. It's classic kaiju. Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that how they introduce Teleston is that they both shine their lights on it, and then you kind of see him hanging off the roof, which I know that was important in the original episode Teleston appeared in. Eric, specifically, do you want to kind of talk about what happened with Teleston?
With like in this comic, or is it
in the show? And
original,
before you do, we got one more person coming in with us. And oh wait, I have a limit of 6 people. I did not realize that. Oof. So actually, do talk about Teleston, and I will be talking about the next person in a moment.
All right. So in the original show, Teleston was basically a pet to the underground people in the episode. And basically, the underground people, they wanted the light, basically, and they kidnapped Kayata in the episode, and they released Teleston to go through a rampage. And then after that, Kayata transforms into Ultraman, fights Teleston, and defeats him. In the comic, he's hanging up on the ceiling. Now, this is just kind of me, but I feel like him hanging on the ceiling was kind of strange. But at the same time, though, knowing that this is a small Teleston, I feel like that is a reasonable sort of thing. That he's like hanging up on there in dark and all that. And obviously, Teleston also hangs around in the dark, so that's also a nice plus that they added there. And and basically throughout the comic, the two people they find them and they start taking them out, but then Kayata appears and sort of handles them in the comic.
In terms of characterization, what would you say that you like Hayata's characterization? Because he's definitely a lot different from how Kayata was in the show, or even how he was in the manga. And just speaking real quick on the manga, KaiMo, you mind just kind of talking about how Kayata was in the Ultraman manga, since I know you haven't talked in a little bit.
Kayata, the manga takes place, I don't know how many years afterwards, but Kayata is an old man, and his son, what is it, Shinji? I think it's been a while since I read it, but basically he is like the head of the Science Patrol, and is basically like running things, and there's like aliens helping run things too. So he's not active in the field. He's kind of like he's the guy who's talking in his ear. Like if like I make a Batman comparison, Batman Beyond, he's the Bruce Wayne. He's the old man giving him advice, telling him what to do in a fight. So he's not like fighting in the field, fighting the kaiju.
Mm-hmm. And then in this Hayata's case, he's just obviously he's a lot younger, but he's also just a lot more brash. He's kind of, I think he's a lot more westernized in a sense where he's kind of cocky, gung-ho attitude, and less kind of like the reserved character he was in the show. Which, Jacob, you mind just talking about how Hayata was in the show?
Sure. So Hayata was a very typical, protagonist character where he had good morals. He was always reserved. He didn't like to boast too much, especially after becoming Ultraman, because he wanted the least amount of attention on himself.
Mm-hmm.
His secret identity was not exposed. He always cared about his friends and always acted without thinking to help them. Like he wouldn't hesitate. He'd go in and save the day. So I'd say, yeah, he's a lot more reserved than say how you're describing the new comic, and I can see the difference where the new comic would see like you said, very Western, while the model protagonist of a Japanese film or show would be a lot more reserved, a lot more honorable about things, and not want to boast about his accomplishments. He only was revealed to be Ultraman in the very end because he had no other choice.
Mm-hmm. And just after Teleston gets killed, we have the big exchange between Fuji and Hayata. And Kim, what would you say? Do you feel that like kind of I would say that there may be some kind of romantic tension between Fuji and Hayata, but do you think like it's kind of overplayed and just kind of takes up too much of the comic? Because their conversation fills up essentially the second half of the midpoint and then the start of the third point of the comic.
Yeah, it does go on for a while. Yeah, I did feel some like romantic tension between those two, and it does go on for a while, and it does feel authentic what they got going on there. But I feel like they're like more like friends, but like it's one of those things where they're friends at first and then they're gonna be lovers later in like maybe a later issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as well as there's also just the added layer, the fact that Fuji did get accepted into the Science Patrol while Hayata didn't, which I'm just thinking off the top of my head, Jacob or Eric can answer this. Was there ever a Ultraman host that wasn't part of the sort of science team of that series? I know the protagonist of Ultraman Jack or Return of Ultraman wasn't part of the team before he became Ultraman, and then when he did, he later on joined. But was there ever a case with one character kind of being like that originally?
One that comes to mind, I really don't remember the show too well, but from what I do remember, I don't believe Ultraman 80 was originally a part of any team. He was either a substitute teacher and then obviously the monster would appear. He'd have some excuse and turn into Ultraman 80. I don't remember him being part of any team though, as far as I know.
Gotcha. And then just after the
I think the very
oh no, go Eric.
I think the very first that was like host that wasn't a part of the team, and then once he became Ultraman, went into the team was Dan Moriboshi, because he was just a regular guy, like he didn't know what was going on until Ultra 7 kind of just accidentally offed him, and he kind of just Ultra 7 just kind of took his identity and sort of went
weird.
with his own sort of thing. Yeah, that is.
Among Us killed Dan, and then he's like, "I'm gonna take this guy's identity. That's mine now."
Yeah.
After
I think I would say Ultra 7.
Oh no, go. Oh no, I got you the floor. You can go. You can.
Oh no, that was it. He was just the first to implement that host. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. And after the whole stint with Fuji and Hayata, there's a red orb, which is what reveals Ultraman. And after Hayata ends up shooting him, there's sort of like that come to Jesus moment where Hayata touches Ultraman's hand. And we actually do not even see him become Ultraman in the scene, and the comic actually cuts off there. And is anyone disappointed by the fact that we don't see him transform into Ultraman, or are you just kind of happy that it's going to be saved for later?
Like, yeah, I was reading it and I was like, wait, that's it? Look what happens next.
I would have loved to have seen like at least a splash panel of like kind of like the comic with the picture going this way, where you could sort of see like the Ultraman kind of pose standing up. But that's just kind of me in this case. What about you, Eric? I know you were definitely part of it. You definitely have the comics that you know.
Oh yeah. When I saw that, when I was like reading the comic and all that, and like I turned the page and I'm just like, bruh, yo, a cliffhanger, dude. Oh man. Nah, but like honestly though, like I feel like that whole sort of like thing that they did was pretty good, because like, you know, like when you're reading the comic, you're kind of like expecting them like, oh, he's gonna turn into Ultraman in the next page, and then you turn it and then like, oh, it's a cliffhanger, and so it kind of like makes you want to like read more of the comic and all that. So that's like I say that was pretty good what they did right there. They had a cliffhanger.
Well, what I think is interesting is that we have the cliffhanger, but then we also have a smaller comic that takes place in Paris in 1954, which is titled Ultra Q, which I'll take this one. Ultra Q was the series that preceded Ultraman, which is, for shorthand, Kaiju meets Twilight Zone. And we're following two characters, and interestingly enough, the monster that they encounter is not even an Ultra Q monster. It's actually Bemular. And Jacob, you want to just talk quickly about Bemular?
Yeah, sure. Bemular first appeared as the pilot monster for the Ultraman original show in '66. It was a standard kaiju that had a resemblance of a dinosaur, a goofy face, and could breathe blue fire similar to Godzilla, but it wasn't radioactive. Bemular is a space monster that was being chased by Ultraman, and that's how the series unfolded when Ultraman struck Hayata's VTOL. In later appearances, Bemular would have like the similar backstory. Not much changed about him up until the manga, where he was changed to be a Saijin, or an alien who was actually intelligent. And I'm not going to delve too much into the manga about that, but he was a humanoid in appearance, not like the dinosaur one that was from the original series.
Aside from like, you could say maybe his like after his face got blown off, you could sort of see his similar like jaws kind of looking like how Bemular did in the show. And that he doesn't look at all like Bemular does. But finally, like at the end of this small little comic, the two characters are fighting a small mini Bemular. Like if I actually just bring this up, you could sort of just see that Bemular is around the same size as a human, not like the 50 meters he is in the original show. And what happens is Bemular ends up getting away, and there's another kind of cliffhanger as one of the people gets killed by this one lady who seems to be working with an alien. So not only do we get one, we have two cliffhangers in this comic that we don't even know if we're going to be getting consecutive Ultra Q stories with Ultraman stories. So we don't even know if this is ever going to get followed up on in the mainline comic in terms of like the current year, or if we're just going to see Ultra Q take place alongside Ultraman. If it doesn't, if we do not see another Ultra Q mini comic after the second Ultraman issue, Kim, would you say like that would feel kind of confusing to people, or do you think that like there's going to be some kind of tie-in and it will make sense, or do you think it's just kind of sloppy overall with how they're handling it?
Yeah, I would prefer if they continued it in the next issue, because then it would just be confusing for everyone who read the first one, you know?
Because like you could tie it in, but then my whole question would be like, why not just have two different comic issues going on at the same time, Ultra Q and Ultraman?
Exactly.
But hopefully what we do see is that that whole kind of plot line with that character getting killed off does help. But then we see in a sort of a two-page kind of art piece here, we do see Ultraman fighting a bigger Bemular, but there are 4 other Ultras there I'm assuming maybe one of them's Ultraman, but the other three who do kind of look similar are Ultra 7. I think following him is Ultraman Taro, and then Father of Ultra is the one in the far background. So I would say, Eric, take Ultraman Taro, and then Jacob, you do Father of Ultra, because I know those are the two we haven't talked about at all. And then after that, we'll be switching topics.
All right. So Ultraman Taro came out at a 19 like around, I know it's somewhere in the 70s. I know it's 1970s something, but basically Ultraman Taro is the sixth Ultra brother and the six Ultra from the main six Ultramen and all that, and is regarded to be one of the and what started the whole six Ultra brothers. And the show itself is amongst the Ultraman fans, it's kind of a mixed bag. Some like it, some don't, because of its sort of campy sort of feel and all that. But at the same, like, it has its silly moments and stuff like that. I mean, I'm more or less in the middle between like Ultraman Taro and stuff like that when it comes to the show. But like the show itself is it's a campy show, but also at the same time it has its moments and stuff like that. So like yeah, when it comes down to it, Ultraman Taro is neat.
Mm-hmm.
And Father of Ultra is the leader of the warriors of I would say Land of the Light. I think they call it a lot of times. They just refer to that. The home world of the Ultra.
Like the M78.
Yeah, M78. He is the leader of the warriors, and he first appeared in Ultraman Ace. He's regarded as being very powerful. He's always seen wearing a nice big red cape. But generally, he's not a forefront character. He's usually seen as an elder, where many Ultras who... It's usually like around the time where a very dangerous foe is on the loose. They'll go to him for guidance on how to stop it or what they should do. Definitely one of those wisdom giving characters that's not really... Never had his own show, never had anything like that, or a proper host. He generally stays on their home world, but he is their leader.
Gotcha. And I would say just to wrap things up for both KaiMo and Ian, just from like what we have talked about so far, would you guys be like really interested in going on and picking up the comic now, or just kind of waiting till you'd see like an omnibus or something of the series? So we'll start out with Ian, since Ian has not like talked at all.
I apologize, guys. I tend to wait until all the issues are collected into a graphic novel. But maybe for the sake of just being able to join the convo, I might pick it up. I will say, though, even though I was quiet this entire time, I actually learned a lot. I am pretty new to the Ultraman franchise, and I'm kind of working my way backwards. I have Ultraman Orb, and, obviously I'm watching Ultraman Z on YouTube as the episodes come out. So I'm kind of like, I'm starting with the Reiwa series and I'm working my way backwards. But it was actually really cool to finally understand like Tesladon's origins and Bemular's origins. So I actually, even though I was quiet, I actually really appreciated getting to know like all the different Ultramans and the kaiju as well.
Mm-hmm. And Kaiba, your thoughts on it?
I mean, I probably will read it. It's not high in my totem pole to read. Like what Ian said, if it ever gets made, because we don't know how popular this is going to be. If it ever gets made, I'll get like that combined issue graphic novel. Mm-hmm. But like with Rulers of Earth, I started that series way too late to buy the individual issues, so I just bought the complete book. So I mean, now I have a chance to buy it issue to issue and get that feeling of waiting like 2 weeks or a week to find out what happens next. So I will read it. It's just not not high on my list.
It's not super important to you.
Yeah, I'll definitely read it as well. I mean, it's not a matter if I'll read it. It's just a matter of, if it gets collected into a graphic novel, then I'll read it that way. But if not, I will try to pick up all the individual issues.
So essentially, it's just a matter of form, time, and money, essentially.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
Biggest fight of 2020, of course. But actually, just sort of cycling out of the Ultraman topic, and since I did have another person who is going to be on this podcast, Jacob, do you mind if I just remove you from the chat so I can add another person in? Because my limit is 6.
Sure, no problem.
Because I know you had to go somewhere, so I didn't want to keep you for too long. So that's cool, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
right,
have a good night, yo.
Thank you for
joining us,
Jacob, and thank you for just kind of being that source of information for all the newbies here.
Yeah, no problem.
So let me remove Jacob and add in our next person. He thinks Kong is not a kaiju, the lover of Big Monkey, the Mexican
His
of
favorite
Texas.
kaiju movie, or the best kaiju movie, is 05, Kong 05.
Exactly.
Kong 05.
Exactly. How you doing, monkey? But yeah,
How are you?
Adam, Scrye Productions in the house, and we're on to a new topic, and this was kind of like the big one that was going to be for Saturday anyway, and this was the ideal Godzilla game. And so we'll just probably be talking about those. We'll all be given sort of our opinions on what we'd like to see from the ideal Godzilla game, and then we'll kind of shift gears and discuss a plausible Godzilla video game. And this again, I will have links in the description for times so people can kind of see what our thoughts are and how those change depending on sort of where we come to in compromise. And as always, ladies first, Kim, talk about your ideal Godzilla game. Who is making it? What kind of style it is? What monsters would you like to see? The whole nine. Just go crazy and fangirl for us.
Okay, wow. Okay. Let's see. All right, so little background. I've played 3 Godzilla games so far. I've played Destroy All Monsters Melee, I've played Godzilla Unleashed, and I've played Godzilla Domination for Game Boy Advance. And those are all fighting games, and they're all fantastic. But I would like to see something a little different. I'm thinking maybe like a virtual reality Godzilla game. Maybe like you can either play as Godzilla and fight other monsters. Like, I would like to see Biolante. Megalon doesn't get used enough. Rodan, Mothra, of course. Ghidorah, obviously. And let's see. Maybe King Caesar even. I don't think he's ever been in the Godzilla video game. So I would like to see that. So virtual reality, you either play as Godzilla, fight those monsters, fight the military and all that stuff. Or this has never been done before. You play as a G-Force member and then you fight Godzilla.
Ooh,
So.
That'd be interesting.
Would it be like a Halo, or
Yeah.
would it be like a third person, like the Arkham games?
Like third person, I think would be good.
I'm thinking like just technically third person would kind of work better, especially because you're gonna have better control of your camera that way. And with first person, there's gonna be so much going on, especially if you're a GeForce member. So like, just to help with balance and all that, third person for that idea would definitely work a lot better. But if you're playing as the monsters, would all the monsters kind of have individual campaigns, or would just Godzilla be the only one getting a campaign in your kind of ideal Godzilla game? It's just sort of the other monsters or characters you can fight against.
I was thinking you just play Godzilla, kind of like in Super Godzilla. I've actually played that one too, a little bit. Yeah, as far as who would make the game, I'm not sure. Maybe Nintendo? Question mark.
Oh, that'd be interesting, because if Nintendo's making it, that means we'll definitely get Switch, and since so many people have Switches, that'd be kind of one of the better consoles to have a wide sort of range of not only just like people in general, but sort of ages as well, considering that like the Switch usually is going to appeal to a younger gamer anyway, and then there's obviously the older people who buy the Switch primarily because of budgetary reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And because I saw KaiMo, I'm going to actually not go in complete order, because I saw KaiMo kind of all in the dark for a second, so he looks like he was about to turn over to the dark side and murder me. I will let him speak, and then Ian will speak, because again, Ian's super quiet, and I feel really bad.
My ideal game, and I've had this idea for about a month. I would love a Mortal Kombat style Godzilla game, and this is plausible because Warner Bros. Owns NetherRealm Studios, which does the Mortal Kombat game. So they have the ability to do it. They just need to get Toho's approval. So like it would just be like in the same style as Injustice or as Mortal Kombat. Each monster would have their own like fighting style. They have their own fatalities. They'd have their own special attacks. You get like some characters in Mortal Kombat. They have like little power ups where you can like get in like little things to knock the health down of your opponent. You could do the same thing. You could have the military come in or like spaceships come in if they're an alien. And like have them zap the monsters or whatever. That would be my ideal Godzilla game.
I was about to say, since you mentioned fatalities, so all the monsters are gonna be able to kill each other, or is it gonna be something?
Yeah, I mean, Toho's not afraid to make them bleed. So
yeah, that is true. Because I'm like Injustice doesn't have us fatalitying people, but they do have their supers,
and they have brutalities. Crossovers.
Mm-hmm.
So
and Marvel versus
Shin Godzilla, for Shin Godzilla, like his fatality could be like starting off with the smoke plume and then the fire and then the laser, and then like it'll catch the monster and then lift him up. He'll turn around, do his back laser, and then it's just blood everywhere and it's just destruction. And then like Rodan, it would just be a supersonic cut. Like he'd use his wing. I did a live stream about this, and I was given tons of I'm
just thinking now that you mentioned like Rodan's Sonic Cut, I'm remembering what he did on Godzilla Ongoing, where he actually decapitated Kaiser Ghidorah's head, doing something similar.
Yeah, and like Space Godzilla, like he could like have crystals shoot up and have him like hold up a monster, or then like have him form crystals inside and make him explode. So I've thought this through. I just haven't thought of friendships that I could do.
Well, you know, an easy one for Jet Jaguar and Godzilla, that's an easy one. Gigan and Megalon's an easy one.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Mothra and Batra get an easy one. Oh, you know, what would be a really fun one is if they were actually able to include that, would be a Gabra and Minya one. Like having, what's it called? Either Gabra doing something with his electricity and Minya's just all happy, or having him on Minya on his shoulders doing something, just friendship.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, this is plausible too because Warner Bros. Owns both Mortal Kombat and Godzilla, at least for now. So they could potentially make this happen.
I would say the one fear is that since they do own Godzilla, their biggest push would be, well, we don't want Toho monsters because that's too much money. We'll take the Toho monsters we do have, and then you get MonsterVerse monsters, which I wouldn't be opposed to seeing characters like Behemoth, Scylla, and Methuselah in a video game, because at least then they get more exposure. But then Godzilla fans would be like, but Mangarus.
Yeah.
So that'd be like the one issue I would have with the idea, which I like the idea. I would love another Godzilla fighter, especially a 2D one. But like, especially with how, like, with specifically the Godzilla universe they do have, there is that sort of incentive to be lazy in that department. Or lazy wouldn't even be the right word to describe, just sort of easy, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And now, Ian, Mr. Mute, you get your turn now. Your ideal Godzilla game.
I feel badly because now it sounds as though I'm just taking ideas from him. I literally actually agree. I think the ideal video game studio would be NetherRealms, just solely based on the fact that they make Mortal Kombat and the Injustice games. But yeah, with Warner Brothers owning Godzilla, I do agree. That's something I didn't even think of. I would probably be concerned that they would only have MonsterVerse monsters, but hopefully they can make it work. I mean, if they can cooperate with DC to get the rights to their superheroes, I imagine they can more or less do the same with Toho. And I mean,
we can finally get that Batman versus Godzilla.
Finally,
we take Gotham City as a map.
Yeah, have Gotham City as a map.
I just realized something. Since in NetherRealm we had Spawn, in DC we've had the Ninja Turtles. If they did a Godzilla game, Gamera probably, Ultraman maybe, just different characters, different other kaiju characters. Because those both franchises aren't opposed to seeing people not in their universe appear as guest characters.
That's
And usually
true.
they have at least one or two, depending on the games, because we do know the Mortal Kombat X had Leatherface, Alien, and Predator.
And that's what I was gonna say. I would like to see a Godzilla video game try to at least get, you know, MonsterVerse Kong, you know, Behemoth, Zilla, you know, at least a couple monsters that aren't Toho owned. But yeah, I mean, I'm a simple guy. I don't need some, you know, huge like open world like RPG Godzilla video game. Just give me a big roster of monsters. Just get me a whole bunch of maps to choose from, and let me just duke it out. But one thing that I actually was brainstorming before this live stream was that I think it would be fantastic if you could basically have a feature where you can make your own monster, and you would have essentially body parts of like, you know, different kaiju OC to choose from, and, you know, based upon your selection, you that would decide your powers, or maybe even we can even take it a step further where, I don't know if you guys play Dungeons and Dragons, you have this gigantic list of powers and abilities, and you are able to choose from them. So you could basically not only design your own monster, but also design your own move set for that monster.
Sort of like an expansion off of Mortal Kombat's Mortal Kombat 11 specifically, its moveset maker, where you could probably have a base kind of moveset for your monster, and then just having different abilities with sort of like classic animations. Maybe you can change the shaders for like certain kind of breath colors, so you could change it from like a blue to a green to a yellow, etc.
Exactly. So that's my idea for a console game. Now, I also actually, while you guys were speaking, I actually was thinking about it would be fantastic if there was also a halfway decent app that's a Godzilla game. I do not like the app that they recently released. It's not entertaining to me.
Defense Force, I think it's called.
Yeah, Defense Force. Yeah, I hate it. Anyway, so I would love to do something along the lines of, you know, like a Pokemon Go or Jurassic World Alive, where you know, either you capture different kaiju, and you can, you know, you can upgrade them, and, you know, boost their stats, and, you know, you can you know, online multiplayer, and where basically you know, it's augmented reality where, you know, a kaiju would appear on your map, and you would use, I don't know, the JSDF to, you know, capture the monster, and then you can later on, you know, improve them.
It would be interesting to see sort of how they could kind of push the ideas of the kind of virtual reality to its limits, where you have monsters kind of just moving around the buildings that you're seeing. If you're like looking kind of up onto a skyline and sort of seeing a kaiju in that scenario, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic.
And now moving on, he has not spoken at all really since he just got on here. Adam, your ideal Godzilla game.
You know, I was thinking about it while everybody was talking about their different games and stuff, and I'm not a big fan of the fighters, to be honest with you. Like, I like fighting games, and I think if NetherRealms did do some sort of Godzilla fighting game, maybe it could work. I just don't see how you can put a story together around that. Like, they tried that already with all of the like Melee games and the PS4 game and all that kind of stuff. What I think would be interesting to see is completely take Godzilla out of his comfort zone, right? And put him into some sort of fantasy setting and make it more like a JRPG or something like Final Fantasy 15, where you can you somehow manage to have like a party of monsters, and you can swap in between each one and build up their abilities and stuff, so you can unleash a devastating attack, and you're still playing. You still have that like third person feel, but like I don't know if you were on the stream where we were on Monstrosities, and I was talking to Laura.
No, I wasn't. I know
you weren't there.
No, because you met, like, right as you said that name, I'm like, no, I've not been on a stream with that person, so that's a nope.
Well, I don't know. I think you were there, but maybe you had to leave or something. Maybe you had to go to work. I can't remember. But she's the cosplay person,
Yep.
right? That Matt met, and it got me thinking about, wouldn't it be interesting to see like Godzilla at like in a human form or something, in a semi-human form, with this really cool looking Godzilla armor, kind of like from the Monster World game or the concept that they had, and he interacts with the I guess the denizens of this world, but whenever it comes to like battle and all that, he transforms into Godzilla. And so like him in human form with the armor is basically just like representing the fact that he's Godzilla, but he's able, like it really puts like we're putting the more God into it, like whereas these are mythological creatures, kind of like the way dragons can transform into humans and stuff like that.
You know what's one game that kind of reminds me of actually is Blue Dragon. You ever
Never
see
heard
that?
of it.
Where it's anime. It's
Never
kind
heard
of
of
similar
it.
where they're like these a group of kids and they all have the ability to like transform into like an animal, and like the main character is like his abilities, he could transform into a dragon, which I recommend. It's a actual really nice game, but who would make it though?
Well, I mean, there's a host of RPG makers out there that could do it, but if you were going to put the time, money, and effort into it,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Square Enix. Oh, easy. I mean, look at the Final Fantasy franchise, right? They can build an awesome world for this. They can easily put something. I mean, if you just look at the way 15 was, right? They had that movie that came out called Kingsglaive before 15 even hit shelves, and they set up the story. So if you played the game or not and you haven't seen Kingsglaive, you really should, because it's a really good prequel story to that game. And then the way that, like, because I remember the very first Final Fantasy game I ever played was 7, and you had the active time bar system, and it was like turn based and all that. And now it's not that so much. It's more like you take control of a character, and there's the way that the combat works. It's all over the place. So like imagine a scenario where like Godzilla, Anguirus, and King Caesar are like going somewhere to accomplish something, and they come across a pack of Zillas or whatever, and they transform, because these Zillas are like mindless and almost like zombie-like, where they want to eat everything or something like that. So they transform, like they're staring at them and they're huge, and they're like and the bam, and they do this really cool animation, kind of like the way they do the summons animations. And then all of a sudden now you have Godzilla, Anguirus, and King Caesar, and they're fighting, and you can like interchange between which one you're using at the time, and then use their abilities in different ways. I don't know. I think that would be interesting, because like I've only played 2 Godzilla games, and that was the one on the NES and Super Godzilla on Super Nintendo. And I've seen the other games, because I mean lots of people do like gameplays of the PS4 game and Melee and Save the Earth and all that kind of stuff. I haven't played them myself personally, but like when I look at the way they set up the story for that, I personally believe that no matter what you're doing, especially if it comes to a video game, mechanics, sure, but aesthetic and story really drive home a game and how well it's going to perform. And a really good indicator is The Last of Us Part 1. Not the second one.
Let's say if you said part 2, I'm gonna kick you out of the street so hard. I swear, I will. No mercy.
Yeah, no
mercy.
No mercy. But when you look at a game like The Last of Us, the gameplay wasn't anything crazy. It's not like a Spider-Man game or an Assassin's Creed game. As a matter of fact, it looks and feels very clunky at times, but that's intentional. And I would think when you're dealing with giant monsters, maybe something like that could happen. And as long as you have a really good story and you're able to as you're moving throughout the world, you're seeing different things, or like, maybe when you're in human form, you're going to all these different temples and you're learning about other monsters that are coming up from the underworld or something like that, and then, your ultimate, like maybe in Act 1, you're trying to go find Destroyer so you can stop whatever his plan is. And he looks like this, badass looking human Deathwing character or whatever, and they end up fighting, and they go all like kaiju size, kind of like the way Ultraman in the like will grow or whatever. I'm not, I don't know too much about Ultraman. I know that like he gets big, you know, and then he does go fighting. So I don't know, something like that. I think that
experimental.
I think that the fighting game genre of Godzilla games has been kind of beaten into the ground. Like that's kind of like all they've ever really made. So I would like to see them actually try something new. And I think they really could do something new like they did with the anime trilogy.
Does in this Square Enix game, will you have a monkey companion, Scrye?
Look, if people want to see Kong in the Godzilla franchise, sure, why not? I don't have anything personally against Kong. I was just last night watching King Kong versus Godzilla as I was going to bed. It's one of my favorites, but yeah, I think Kong and his character could provide a really good story arc as like a sub story arc into the game, because Kong has always been that like tragic hero sort of emotional character,
sympathetic villain.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't even say he's a villain. He's almost like
misunderstood.
Well, highly misunderstood. But when you actually look at the story of Kong, you can compare it to a lot of other stories where characters or a group of people or whatever is displaced from their home and taken somewhere else. I mean, like when you think about the original story of Kong, you had these movie makers or whatever. You had this one particular guy, but you had these group of individuals go to where he lived and then pull him out of his home to take him somewhere where he was very unfamiliar and put him on display or use him for their gain. Mm-hmm. And he literally, even though he might have caused a lot of damage or whatever, and people looked at him as a monster because he was big and scary or whatnot, like he was really a victim, to be honest. Kong was a huge victim because he was in a world where he had no clue where he was. He was very unfamiliar with it. And the only thing that brought him any kind of solace was that blonde-haired, blue-eyed human girl that he fell in love with in a weird kind of way, because the animal-human thing, that's weird. Anyway,
furry talk on my stream.
Yeah. We get into the furry kind of side of things, but that's like, that was the only thing that brought him any kind of like peace from his anxiety and stress in the middle of New York or wherever he was. And I mean, even in King Kong versus Godzilla, the same thing kind of happens. Like they literally go to his island and it's a greedy corporation, a greedy news corporation that pulls him out and owns the rights to Kong when like this creature's existed for how long, and all of a sudden you own him? Like what? And then he goes romping through Japan because he's not at home. He doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know where, like, why. And they literally, like, this is like a cage fight scenario when you go back and you look at King Kong versus Godzilla. Like, they literally took Kong away from his home to go fight Godzilla. Had they never gone to Skull Island or wherever they found him in that movie, like, they would have never met. You know, he was content. He was at home. He was doing his thing at home. Netflix and chill. You know what I'm saying? Like,
what's ironic is that considering how they treat Godzilla in that film, if they didn't do anything with Kong, Godzilla probably would have just walked off and just done his own thing.
He would have.
Like the Deus Ex Machina weakness to lightning for some reason. But that's neither here nor there. Eric, you're the next person on the list, my dude.
Oh man, I don't know if Adam read my mind or anything, bro, but he took the words right out of my mouth, man. Like that was exactly what I was gonna say. Like have the game instead of an RPG, but like the only difference is that it was kind of gonna be. I had this sort of idea for a while, but like I don't know if you're still familiar with it, Zim, with one of my comics on my DeviantArt with Kaiju story. I was sort of gonna.
I was like, why have I never told Scrye about Kaiju Story? Because he would probably really love Kaiju Story.
Honestly, I mean, knowing what he just discussed about, he probably would. Honestly,
exactly.
I am first and foremost, and I'm kind of like meeting everybody for the first time. I've met you, KaiMo. You know, high five from far away, from a screen away. But I know KaiMo. I know Zim, but I've not met anybody else here. And if anybody's new on the stream that doesn't know who I am, like I'm a storyteller, so I'm all about a good story. Like that's my thing. Like I'm not an expert on any one particular thing. I'll give my opinions if people want, but I look at things more for story. Like I don't even own a PlayStation, Xbox, or Switch. I watch all my games online and I watch it for the story. Like I love the Mortal Kombat franchise. Haven't touched it at all, but I love the new Mortal Kombat games because the story is really good in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, I don't know. Got to throw up that link, sir.
I will.
That's
his idea.
I mean, not to go into too much, but Scrye, we actually haven't met, but like only briefly in a call in Discord on the Kaiju Conversations. I was the one with the Bolton profile picture.
Kaiju Conversations.
One of the Discords.
Yeah.
Yeah. I left that Discord up fast enough.
Yeah, it's gone downhill. But anyway, on topic, it was just like the same thing what Adam said. You know, it was like gonna be an RPG sort of thing, and that it would be third person and everything like that. And like the only difference is that there'll be like campaigns and also battle sequences where like it's like kind of rolled all into one, where it's like a fighting but also an RPG kind of game. Like it's I guess what I can describe it like Smash Brothers, sort of like nice. It has like a story and you could play against other players and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But like the only difference would have a campaign. Like the campaigns would be like fighting against like the giant versions, like the prime monsters of like Godzilla and Space Godzilla, Destroyer, like each individual like monster and all that. You get to fight them all with like a group of characters. And you get to fight them, and if you beat them, you earn like rewards and everything like that through that. And of course, like you'll be able to fight some of the characters and all that, like all the characters that you would be able to fight. It would be kind of like similar to the campaigns of like those, but like it'd be like at the same time also similar to a game that I don't know if you guys are familiar with called the Ultra Kaiju Battle Breeder. It's basically like a Ultraman game where it has all the monsters and all the Ultramen, and you'll be able to fight the monsters and get them through DNA and all that. And it'll be similar to that and all that. And so yeah, that's something that I would want to have one day and someday, like, and like I guess like the game I guess the game developer that I would have make it would like, I don't know if you guys have heard of them, but they go by I don't know how to pronounce, I'm butchering the name, but they're well known for their Honkai games, which is basically like it's the same thing. It's like an RPG game,
like,
and
the people who made
the graphics
Impact.
in the games are pretty good.
Is that what you're talking about?
Honkai. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Honkai Impact. Yeah.
Let me actually look up that.
Yeah, I would
studio,
say,
because I don't think it's the same, but it's like similar.
Yeah.
MiHoYo. That's the name of that.
MiHoYo. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, that's the company name. I would say like they would be able to make the game and all that.
I'm so glad that's Chinese and not actual English.
Yeah. Honkai Impact is actually just Battle Ruby, if anyone is wondering what we're talking about here. But I would say, for my ideal Godzilla game, I would start off with first the team that I'd have working on it would be Team Ico. So Team Ico are the people who did obviously Ico. They also did The Last Guardian, but what they're also known for, more famously, is Shadow of the Colossus.
I was about to ask, is that Shadow?
No, that game's sick. Mm-hmm.
So specifically, how they've had especially, I forget specifically who helped them work on the Shadow of the Colossus remake, but essentially just those teams working together. I would love to have like a Godzilla game. It would be your character. You'd be playing as Godzilla, just primarily as Godzilla, throughout most of the game normally, and throughout all the Team Ico games, you actually do not even have like human characters who speak English. It's all through subtitles, and it's not even Japanese either. It's just its own language, and its setting would be similar, kind of, to the anime Godzilla series, where you're on a world, very little humans, and instead of there just being servum everywhere, there's actually monsters that you can fight against. But so when you're playing as Godzilla, there's very minimal kind of what's it called? A very minimal HUD, so you don't see anything for your health, you don't see anything for like energy levels, nothing like that. And instead, everything is done how it's always done in Team Ico, very minimalist, and you see everything via just what's on your character. So Godzilla would obviously get scratched up if he's hurt by opponents. You could see sort of red to show bleeding. But after a while, because he's Godzilla, he can regenerate. So you can sort of see cuts and stuff just regenerating, and the red would slowly disappear. So you can see he's back up to full health. To just charge up your atomic breath, you would see it normally, and it goes up your spine. So you can sort of see how long it's going to take for your beam to come out. You can control it with like your analog stick and stuff like that. However, I would also, just to be able to have other characters playing in the game and in the same play space, but with some differences, he would go to just different temples dedicated to different monsters. So like Temple of the Moth, Temple to Rodan, even like desecrated temples to like other villain monsters like Ghidorah, Destroya, stuff like that. And you're just playing through different moments in time in this universe with just different monsters completing different objectives, which are kind of told to you by the human characters, and you just sort of see how that story unfolds with obviously a final villain at the end, which I actually wouldn't even have it be something like Destroya, King Ghidorah, or Space Gods or anything like that. Just be a new monster just for the games, similarly to how we had Bagan in Super Godzilla, and Bagan's never appeared in any of the movies.
Mhm.
So sort of, it's always good to have game content that's sort of new to the games. And that'd be my idea for like an ideal Godzilla game, because I think just having a Godzilla game where you actually are Godzilla, but with like a story that befits sort of like the interactivity of a video game, just harnesses that in the best way possible, would be what I would want to do. The only issue with my idea is that if I'm having Team Ico build it, it's essentially going to be exclusive to the PlayStation systems, because Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last Guardian were all exclusives to the PS3 and the PS4 exclusively. So that'd be the biggest issue, is that you're not able to get the most amount of people. And that was the biggest issue we had with the PlayStation 4 Godzilla game, because that was only on the PlayStation systems. But if there was some way to like get like a wider range for people, like having Team Ico expand out, and like Sony not being super greedy and letting us have like maybe a PC, which would also allow you to probably play an Xbox due to how Xbox is kind of integrating itself with computers nowadays, it'd be possible. But that'd be sort of my kind of ideal Godzilla game personally.
That's sick.
But like now you just come to the point where I'm thinking a plausible Godzilla game. And in this case, I'm just gonna say that we just kind of all vote on what we kind of agree would be the kind of the best decision. We are now all a team of developers, and we're kind of technically, in for the sake of this scenario, all working on the same thing, but we all kind of vote, and whatever happens kind of happens in this sort of hypothetical. So we are allowed to make a Godzilla game, and to start out with, we're just seeing who we want to get, and we just have a few choices. We can either work with Microsoft. Microsoft allows us to we get a bigger budget, but there's going to be an exclusivity deal with Microsoft. With Sony generally just allows you to have Sony's kind of work ethic kind of just depends on studio to studio, but you're essentially going to be getting the same thing here. Or we can go indie, or you can have any other developer that we're getting. And essentially, if you have any other developers in mind, just argue the points, but not like on the idea of just like, I like this game idea and they know how to do this kind of game. It's essentially like, what can they as a company offer to you guys? So I'll just start off with Kim. What would you say for a vote?
I think the best way to go would be like maybe like an indie game. I guess.
Indie game would definitely mean that you'd have less of a budget, but you'd have a lot more creative control. That would be definitely the thing you could say with an indie. And that just kind of that would limit us in a few ways, but also again, I'd say the vision would be more pure in a sense. Is that kind of like why you picked to do an indie, or like, or you just don't have like a preference when it comes to like big corporations and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's kind of like a little bit of both. I don't have a preference because I don't play video games that much, but also, like you said, with indie, you have more creative control. And we've had, experiences with, people who are not fans of Godzilla just throwing Godzilla stuff together, like the '98 movie that wasn't, that we shall not speak of. But
Yes.
yes. But yeah, I feel like if it was an indie game, we would have more people who were actually fans of the franchise, and it would be a better product in the end, even if it is a lower budget.
I can agree with that. I could definitely agree with that. But then after that, I think the biggest hurdle that we'd have to solve in this kind of idea is we'd have to get a ton of money just for licensing. That'd be the biggest issue.
Well, that's what crowdfunding is for. That's what crowdfunding.
But we have to do a lot of crowdfunding. KaiMo, get that garbage off your screen.
What is that?
It's a VHS.
You know what? You're forgiven only because that's a VHS.
Oh, dude, I have like a whole thing of VHS tapes.
Only because it's a VHS.
Oh, that's the movie about that iguana, right?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Just get that
out of my face.
Exactly. Thank you, Kim.
Hey, read this for me, will you? Nathan, read this for me.
Zilla. Yeah. That's what that says right
something
there.
right there.
No, it's missing the knot at the top. That's what it's
exactly.
Missing.
What does this say?
I will send you that picture. Right. I will send you a picture.
What does this say?
No, that's not saying anything.
What does this say?
Why y'all hating on Zilla like that, man?
I don't care about this movie.
Listen, I have a video on my YouTube channel explaining why Zilla is not Godzilla and should not be considered part of the franchise.
You're coming on to that. Now Kim is my spirit animal. Now she's coming on to the 98 stream whenever we do that, because I know I have KaiMo and Kim. Adam's gonna be there, and I'll have KaijuZilla 98 definitely coming on for that. And I just have to go think of who's the last person for that. But since Adam's back, Kim voted for Indie, so I have to do a lot of crowdfunding, but we have more creative freedom if her vote wins. Eric, what are you thinking? We doing a specific team? Are you still going with your with Honyi, or are you thinking a different route for a plausible Godzilla game?
I mean, I like half of me is kind of like thinking going with the how we can mess up the name. Going to that, but at the same time though, an indie game would also be pretty good too, because then like we just mentioned, like you'll have full on control. But on the other hand, you'll also have a bit like not much money to fund this game. But there's also such thing as crowdfunding again. So I mean, I would say indie games as well. And also at the same time though, I will admit this, I don't really know too much when it comes to like backgrounds of like certain companies like Microsoft and all that stuff. Like if the quality looks good, like for me, like if the quality looks good and it's like then the game is playable, I'm good.
But let's say just plausible are able to get the crowdfunding where we're given the rights to at least just Godzilla as a character. So you have just Godzilla. So we're on that stage at least. So are you still going corporate, or are you putting in a vote for indie?
Honestly, I'll probably just go for indie.
Okay. And now after he gets his gulp in, Adam.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. Everybody.
No, don't worry. I know you're busy.
I just got home. Well, no, I just got home from work. I haven't eaten all day. It's dinner time.
Do you want me to skip?
No. Okay. So, if we're, I know this is all hypothetical, but if I'm being real, if I can be a little realistic here,
yeah,
I know Toho. I don't know them personally, but I know that they have a lot of things to say when it involves their IP. So going with an indie company, I don't think would be feasible. One, because they want Godzilla to be in the limelight again, and I'm not saying an indie company can't do that, but they would be really hard pressed, and I think Toho would want more production value or quality. So obviously a bigger budget would work, but not even just that, but having a more what's the word? A game developer or a studio that has a better reputation. I'll give you a really good example. Let's look at the new Marvel Avengers game that just came out that was made by Square Enix. Right? So I don't know if you guys have seen it or not, but there's a brand new
okay things about it. Other things I have not seen.
Well,
I've seen it's been mixed for me. There's been a lot of issues I've heard, but then
there's gamers being gamers and complaining about it, but looking at it from if I were Toho and I was allowing us to make a video game, one, I would probably want to stick with a Japanese company because they have the same kind of values that Toho would have. And a good example of that is, you were just holding up Godzilla 1998, right? Values. Why
should you have an excuse to put it back on the screen, Adam?
So
burn it.
So we have the same. We'll have, if we go with a company like Square Enix or Capcom, even they make really good games too. I think we would get green light or green lit by Toho to do a lot more of the fantastical things that we would want to try to do. Or to be able to branch off with these ideas that we would, especially like if you want to make a fighting game, Capcom, like hands down, they make some of the best in the game, in business.
No arguing with that,
right? But so we would. I personally would want to go big or go home, right? So corporate, I wouldn't do indie. I would be very specific with the developers that I chose because I don't want to pick someone like Naughty Dog who's going to ruin their own franchise.
Yeah, no. Well, Naughty Dog's not even Japanese, so if we're going to the idea that we need a Japanese developer, Naughty Dog's not even on the table.
Right. And then so I would definitely go corporate. I would definitely go with a much if I had the money or I had the backing. Because here's the other thing too. There's a lot of developers or companies out there that if they were given the chance would love to get their hands on the Godzilla franchise because of its massive surge recently in popularity over the last 4 to 5 years now, ever since Shin Godzilla came out, basically. But that's kind of where my head would be because one, the production value would look amazing. Look at God of War. Look at God, there's so many like AAA games that actually look phenomenal. Whether or not they play well or have a good story is another thing entirely. But we're just going off of like the aesthetics because I make the Godzilla Apex series, and one thing that some people, it's not really a complaint, but it's something that they bring up is the fact that it looks more anime instead of like, I think a lot of people automatically, when you think of Godzilla, you have that like photorealistic image in your head. You don't like, a lot of people when they think Godzilla, they don't think about the anime trilogy at all.
I'll also say like, if we're getting Square Enix, we probably could get photorealistic Godzilla, citing their graphics of the Marvel games, despite how they kind of are. The game does look good. I will admit that.
It's a gorgeous looking game. But so that would be the direction I would try to push it if we all had to agree on something, because you get a bigger budget to do way more. Marketing would be off the hook. The production value would be phenomenal, right? So, like that, I that's the direction I would have to go in my opinion.
Ian. So right now we've got two for indie, and then Scrye saying go big or go home, and he's saying Japanese developer. So that's kind of his vote right now. What's your vote, or are you going independent on your idea as well?
No, I'm not going independent. I do have to agree with Adam. I think Toho wants to know that their IP is going to be well exposed, and they probably want to know that it's going to be a large company that can distribute and advertise this game and really, get it out there. I mean, this is just being realistic. I would love to have the creative freedom that comes with an indie project, but since we're being realistic, I really think Toho is going to want to know that their IP is going to be, brought
Profitable
to the public.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of, so yeah, I am going to say not indie if we're being realistic, and yeah, they would probably go with the Japanese company. I guess just because it's closer to home. They might go with, something from America. I'm not really sure which way. There's plenty of choices when it comes to Japanese companies. Like Adam said, Capcom could probably do it justice. But yeah, I'm definitely going to say, like maybe even Sony, just because, Sony seems to be, I don't know, I'm sorry,
I don't mean to cut you off, but what was the name of that company that made the Armored Core games?
From Software.
From Software could
I'll be talking about. There's something I'll be talking about with FromSoft later, but
yeah, Sony Studios could do it. From Software, there's a ton of.
The issue is that if we do agree on Sony, we'd have to argue either is the game gonna be exclusive to Sony platforms and then gets a timed release on PC, or do we take someone else from Japan and we get a full release across everything?
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's hard to say. If the history is any indication, I mean, it was a PS4. The newest console Godzilla game was a PS4 exclusive. But I mean, it would make. I would think that it would make sense to, be universal across all platforms.
Mm-hmm. And now, lastly, KaiMo.
I'm going to have to agree. I think it has to be a big company, or it has to be. I don't think it can be indie if we want it to be succeed. As far as whether it's an American or Japanese company, I really don't know. I'm not that big into gaming. I know we mentioned Square Enix, Capcom, Sega maybe, although they're
kind of all over.
I just go back to Colonial Marines and that debacle, that how poorly they handled that. So I think maybe Sega, with their history of licensed products, is off the table. So I think I might just have to go back to NetherRealms, because they make games available for PS or PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. So the availability would be there. Yeah. Maybe they might do a Square Enix thing with this Avengers game, where Spider-Man's a PS or a PlayStation exclusive. Maybe they could do this monster is a PlayStation exclusive and this is an Xbox exclusive. Although that would be a dumb idea.
Exclusive out of that, or no, in terms of the Avengers game? Because I know I've heard Spider-Man was a PlayStation exclusive, but it looks like Xbox isn't getting anything. Okay,
no, I mean, I know. I'm guessing Spider-Man is a PlayStation exclusive because of this other Spider-Man games.
Yeah, it's because of that.
Yeah, so
it's because Sony owns Spider-Man.
yeah, that's too. But I think it would have to be a big name studio. I don't think it could be indie. And whether or not it's a Japanese studio, I don't know.
I would say, in the case, like I definitely want to go indie. I really do want to argue the
absolutely.
case, but I think definitely they do want to go big or go home. So I'm leaning towards more corporate. However, I'm thinking that in terms of a Japanese company, that may not necessarily be the case, especially considering that Warner Brothers does own Godzilla at the moment, or Legendary. And because of that, Warner Brothers does have gaming like studios under their wing to develop a game if, like Toho was saying, that we are making a Godzilla game. So the idea of a Japanese studio isn't exactly cut and dry. And right now, NetherRealm probably is the most likely candidate if we're getting an American company Godzilla game, which then probably means we're getting a fighter. Most likely, if they want to build off the idea of the MonsterVerse specifically, if that's where they want to go, because with like the Japanese Godzilla game, this is something we're gonna have to go in a maybe sooner than later with like which Godzilla. But we'll probably get to there when we get to there. But I'm thinking that in terms of a big company, I'd say I'd mentioned that FromSoft was going to be. Adam mentioned FromSoft, and I'd say probably if we're getting a big company, FromSoft is the most likely candidate, most likely due to the fact that everyone likes FromSoft. They're not like a company that has an excessively bad reputation, like say EA or Bethesda when it comes to buggy games, or even Square Enix. A lot of stuff hold around with, like I'd say, like their Tomb Raider reboot, despite how good it looked, was absolute garbage in story and gameplay. Capcom's always had its issues as well, and if
their games are also littered with microtransactions.
Yeah, that's another thing about Capcom. But if we get FromSoft, you can essentially market the game as creators of Dark Souls now tackle Godzilla. That's one of the big advantages you'd have for dealing with FromSoft. And it would also allow just the team there to work on something that isn't any of the Souls games. So that'd be my pick is FromSoft in this case. But I know Adam,
Guerrilla Games, who made Horizon Zero Dawn. Guerrilla Games.
Is Guerrilla Games no? Guerrilla Games is an American company.
You also have Ubisoft, which has multiple studios around the world, including America, and they're the ones that did the Assassin's Creed games and stuff like that. They've done a lot of games, actually.
Yeah, but really the thing is that with Ubisoft, it depends on like we'd have to see like which Ubisoft company do we want to get? Do we want to get Ubisoft France or Ubisoft Montreal? Because Ubisoft Montreal usually does produce, I think, the better games out of the Ubisoft titles in comparison to Ubisoft France.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing with Ubisoft. And another thing is that like a lot of things are going to be connected to the Uplay store. That'd be like a big issue there. Is that unless we like want to have a lot of things tucked behind there, because there's a lot of stuff there with Siege. Siege is a lot of microtransactions, a lot of microtransaction stuff in Assassin's Creed and Rainbow now. But speaking of microtransactions, are we just gonna vote like no on microtransactions, just across the board?
It depends how fast do you want to go broke.
Well, I think it depends on how much you want to like the vanilla game to be. Like, do you want to tell the entire story? And this is also with DLCs too. Like, should microtransactions just be like extra skins or extra?
Well, that's the thing. Godzilla has an opportunity to be very microtransaction heavy. Like, you could have an entire microtransaction store with every Godzilla ever made as a skin, but they're all
then new ones that have never been seen before that are exclusive to this video game.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue. Is that do we want to have microtransactions and have like the first big Godzilla game be notorious for microtransactions? Like, pre-order now and get the exclusive 1954 Godzilla skeleton. Order now.
Signed by Haruo Nakajima.
Exactly.
So from everything that I've seen from like AAA games and stuff that have come out, and just knowing different groups of gamers in general, one thing isn't deniable, that gamers love their cosmetics.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a way to make yourself look and feel more badass than you actually are, you're gonna pay for it. And most people do.
I'm saying, are we gonna be checking a crowd that's gonna say, I want to look badass, but I want to earn it, or I just want to look cool and I'll just pay for it. I don't really care about the community in that case.
That's it. Well, it's not so. You're kind of like black. That's too black and white, my friend. Like you got to think about what kind of game. What kind of game? Well, what kind of
spectrum? That's the thing.
Well, the thing is, you gotta ask yourself, what kind of game have we settled on? What kind of game are we making? Are we making an open world sandbox kind of game? Are we making a fighter game? Like that'll all determine whether or not there should be microtransactions and there shouldn't be.
Well, actually, that would be a good place to start along, because it looks like corporate beat indie, sadly, which I wanted to defend indie, and I could have defended indie and made it a split vote. But if we are going AAA, anyone who did want a fighter, would you be fine with the idea of the first really big Godzilla game being an open world sandbox game, or is anyone really stuck on getting a fighter?
I mean, I would like a fighter. Is like an open world like GTA or something like that.
Well,
Something
I mean,
like that. Essentially, an open world game tailor made for Godzilla in this sense. Like,
okay,
would be with this this bigger budget, we have opportunities to make a bigger world map. Therefore, we have quests that aren't exactly like GTA quests or Far Cry quests, anything like that. It's going to be specifically made with a giant monster in mind.
I mean, my mind, like, I don't play games, so my mind, or at least not very often, my mind with that description brings me to Arkham Knight, where you can and the Arkham games, where you can just like go around like Asylum and Arkham City and Gotham. Like, what can you do with a Godzilla game? Like, oh, King Ghidorah is over in Infant Island. I don't know, Mothra is trying to take down Anguirus or whatever. Like, I don't know what else you could do in an open world game.
I would say, like, definitely with an open world game, we could have something like that with certain characters in different parts of the map, similarly to how Assassin's Creed Odyssey, despite my misgivings about that game, you were able to travel across places via boats, which Godzilla doesn't need because Godzilla can swim. And that gives you a whole new level of kind of movement and combat, especially underwater. That gives you rise to a whole new sandbox of enemies to fight against. Specifically, like fighting Ebera underwater is essentially always going to be an exclusive thing, or like you can get achievements for like be able to throw Ebera out of the water, and you get an achievement for that. Right. Or like you can it allows you to use your base kind of enemy roster a little bit more clever. So like. Fighting a Zilla on land is going to be different to fighting a Zilla in water, stuff like that. I swear to God.
Hang on, would this help? Ow. Hang on.
That's what you get.
It did not go all that well. Hang on. Is this better?
That's better. Yes.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, now my finger hurts. That's a metal knife slapping on my ring finger.
I would definitely want to go the route of DLC.
That's better. That's better.
I'll send that to you, Kim, in a private chat, so you can have that forever.
Fantastic.
It's trademarked as Godzilla.
Well,
actually, it's about the trademark. It's not Godzilla.
Legally, I have to call it Godzilla.
The trademark for the design is actually Zilla now. That is one thing.
The trademark for this movie, though. The trademark for this poster and this movie is Godzilla. So legally, I have to call it Godzilla.
Well, legally because of precedent, not because of preference.
No, well,
that's obeying the law.
All that matters. Like,
that's obeying the law to the letter instead of the spirit. The spirit.
I'd prefer to go faster than 65 on the interstate. I'd like to go like 80 or something, but I have to go 65.
But then have to, hit him with the facts, KaiMo. Hit him with the facts. We could argue that, and then I can be like, oh, let's look at how many traffic accidents.
See, when you have to do that, and you have to pull in other things to make your point, Zim. Your point is now moot because your argument doesn't stand on its own 2 feet.
That's not Communication work. We should look at like evidence to prove that.
Well, anyway, this is a pointless debate. We all
It's not too much we have that stream.
This is a stream for another day.
Yeah, completely. But I do think like before we can actually sit here and talk about things like microtransactions, and I think DLC would definitely have to be a must, because if you make the game good, people are gonna want like a sequel or something, and DLC.
Well, then that comes down to like, do we want free DLC? Do we want
no, hell no.
Day one
Sorry,
patch
I don't
DLC.
work for free, bro. I don't work for free.
That's all. It's
Seasonal
all
passes.
No, well, like
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I think personally, within the way games work, is if you make a game, especially if it's more story driven with a campaign. Let's use God of War for example, right? God of War is definitely a story driven game. It could have multiplayer capabilities, which we could easily figure out how we could implement that. But if the core of what makes that game so good, and not just God of War, but there's tons of, Senua, or was it Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, Horizon Zero Dawn. I mean, there's so many games where the story is what really gets people to want to buy the DLC. It's not just because cosmetics, that like the cosmetics. Obviously, player power-ups would be a no in my go. I don't think if a game can't offer you a way to get your own player power-ups through the game.
What do you mean by player power-ups?
That's
like XP bonuses? Or?
I'm talking about pay to win.
Yeah.
So like pay to win would be no. Cosmetics is cool, depending on the game and how we do it. DLC is definitely a must, because if we create a game and a good story behind it, people are going to want a sequel. We're going to want to make a sequel. And I personally don't see the point in continually making brand new games unless it's like, kind of like with what they're doing with Assassin's Creed. We had Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and it took place in a certain time period. And then the DLC was Atlantis and all that kind of stuff.
Wait, Odyssey? Oh, yeah, an Odyssey. I thought you said for some reason I thought you said Unity. I'm like, what? When did Unity take place?
No, and then we have we had Origins. I don't know if Origins really got any DLC.
It did.
But now we have this new one that's coming out that's dealing with the Norse mythology and stuff, Valhalla. And so that's a whole nother. So maybe in that particular case, sure, if that's how we decided, like the direction we took the game, but definitely want DLC, but not ridiculously expensive. It just depends on how much you're adding. Like if the first game we're adding, like we have like 50 hours plus of content, sure, standard rates, standard $50 game, $60 game, whatever it costs. But like with what Pokemon did with Sword and Shield, is that right? Is that the new games?
Yeah, but
they added DLC where you get to travel to an island. I think more Pokemon become available. And the story progresses a little bit, but it's only like $30.
Yeah. Yeah, the more Pokemon got added, that was free. So now you can just see those anywhere. But it was the Isle of Armor and the new Pokemon, like the new Galar Pokemon that were added. That's part of the DLC itself. Because originally, like, everyone was kind of expecting all the pokes to be in the base game, which didn't end up being the case, which upset a lot of people. Then it was the updates where they started adding more stuff, which they haven't added everything yet. Like, my favorite Pokemon isn't even in that game, which still upsets me. But,
But you see my point, like, and then another thing is we as developers would have to consider with the story, the gameplay, and everything else about it, how many kaiju are we going to put in this? Because if we put all the eggs in one basket, what are we going to have to make a sequel when the fans demand a sequel? Or what are we going to have to expand things? Like if we put all the Toho monsters in there in the first go, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We have nothing to hold back on,
So we can move on the story now too. If we are doing a story, should we be relying on the big five for the story, or should we kind of do something that the Godzilla fans haven't seen, or should we go really safe for the wide audience?
I think it has to have a wide appeal for at least the vanilla game, because if only Godzilla fans like, oh, I know that, I understand that, I like this game, but someone else is like, what the hell is this? And then turns it off, then there goes 95, if not more, % of your audience.
You remember, not just Godzilla fans are going to be playing this game. That's not the goal.
Yeah.
We're trying to get everybody to play this.
Yeah. And, you know, this is maybe going back to the DLC, maybe like a smaller story, like have the story be like playable and engaging for everyone. And then if they want to, like for a DLC, there could be like a more specific like reference storyline, I guess, for a DLC that would cater more to the fans. But if the game is good enough and people who aren't fans like want to play more, then they can get the DLC, and then they'll be like, oh, I guess this is from a Toho film. But for the base vanilla game, I don't know what other non-Godzilla fans would think, but you know, for the base vanilla game, it would have to be a wide like appeal. It would have to be, you'd have to get as many people interested, not just Godzilla fans. It's like it's like comic book people who are like, oh, Disney or Marvel is making these movies because of us, because the comic book fans. No, they're not. They're not. So it has to have a wide appeal.
What does that mean that we?
Which is all the more reason why you need to go with a big developer.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, if we have to kind of go wide audience, does that mean we have to end up with Ghidorah as the main enemy again, or can we argue that we can maybe get someone else in the game as an antagonist, like Destroyer?
Well, we can have there be another antagonist aside from Ghidorah, but because even though Ghidorah is, at least right now, the most widely recognizable Godzilla villain. I mean, people are like, oh, he's the Joker to Bat or to Godzilla. You know, you could do Mecha Godzilla or Destroyer, or I don't know who else, Hedra or whatever.
See, Destroyer, people don't even know who he is. Like, general audiences don't know who Destroyer is.
Yeah.
General audiences know who Rodan, Godzilla, King Ghidorah, and Mothra are.
And Mecha Godzilla.
Well, not yet. The movie hasn't come out yet.
Well, everyone kind of knows about, like, there is a robot Godzilla. That's kind of been in the public consciousness for years. So I'd say there's a reason why it's called the Big Five.
Right.
So like you can.
But if you look at polls, I mean, first off, American audiences are going to differ. We would to answer your questions, because you're starting to ask really specific questions. We would have to try to set up a poll to see who everybody's favorite monsters are. Like, they did one in Japan, I think in 2017.
Yeah.
And I think the number one, like, Godzilla wasn't even on the list, right?
No,
the number one was like Mothra.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then you had like
Ghidorah.
Ghidorah was second, and then Manila. Then Manila was up there as number 3.
He's a
in
Disney.
Japan. Like, and then like a few later, you had Little Godzilla, right, in Japan.
Check it again.
But so my point is, we would have to see what everybody is most familiar with, figure out what to do with those particular characters, and then save. Maybe, I mean, like, why does Ghidorah? I mean, Ghidorah can be the big bad, right? Because he usually, like, if you really compare all the monsters together, Ghidorah is like the strongest bad guy Godzilla's ever fought. Period. He could beat pretty much any other monster, bad guy, villain, hands down. But he doesn't have to be the end of the initial game. Like,
well, I'm thinking, do we not kill Ghidorah off, or do we save room?
No, we don't have to. I mean, they didn't kill the prophets off in Halo 1, did they?
But we never saw the prophets in Halo 1, remember?
Exactly. Why do we can know about Ghidorah, and we can know about the Covenant, you know what I mean? And we can know that there's a hierarchy, but we don't have to actually get there in the first game.
Well, that's if we're talking about if we're thinking about a whole different game, not just DLC. Because remember, Halo 1 had no DLC at all.
No, because they had a sequel and a trequel.
No, we're not talking about a sequel. We're just talking about a single game.
But that's what I'm saying. That's my point. Like, instead of us making multiple games or making sequels, all sequels are, in my opinion, are DLC that you had to pay full price for, right? So if you have a game that has a part 1, part 2, part 3, so on, so forth, those are all everything past the first game is DLC, regardless if you just downloaded it or you had to go and buy a whole nother game. Like Halo 2 is DLC for Halo 1 because it's not its own story. It literally is continuing the story of Master Chief, Cortana, the humans, the UNSC in their battle with the Covenant. Same thing with Halo 3. Maybe what's going on and the themes are different, but it's all part of the same universe, all the way up and through all the current games. They're all part of the same universe. So it's, in my opinion, that's all DLC. If you're going to make two different games, you're going to make a Godzilla RPG, and then you're going to turn around and make a Godzilla fighting game. Two separate games. That's the difference. So in this particular case, the DLC is what I'm referring to. We don't have to, in the base game, have all our eggs in one basket. So we can save maybe in the first game, the story goes something like Godzilla's trying to quell Rodan and he's got to go find Mothra to like power him up or something because Rodan's the king of the skies and he can dodge Godzilla's atomic blast or whatever. And maybe he can have multiple Rodan because, you know, the original had two and a bunch of other eggs. So maybe that's like the story of the base game. And there's hints at Ghidorah and there's hints at Mechagodzilla or Gigan or whoever else, all these other big bads. And then those come in later DLC content. It just depends on first what kind of game we're doing. If you're doing a fighting game, sure, throw all the monsters in there. But if you're doing a story-driven RPG kind of game, then you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Well, just speaking quickly of that top 20 list, it went Mothra, Ghidorah, Rodan, Minal, Mechagodzilla 74, Anguirus, Mecha King Ghidorah, Baby Godzilla / Godzilla Jr., Gigan, Hedorah, Biollante, Kiryu, Super Mechagodzilla. So Mechagodzilla made it on there 3 times. Jet Jaguar, Kaiser Ghidorah, Baragon, Destroyer Variant, Godzilla Source, and Batra. So generally, that is, if we're gonna use that as like our kind of baseline poll, then that's who we can kind of work with.
And one thing I want to mention too, I keep mentioning the Arkham games, but right now it seems like we're doing an open world. Like the first game, Arkham Asylum, had Joker as pretty much the only villain. I mean, it's like, sure, there were like Riddler, like statues
Scarecrow.
or whatever. Yeah, and there was Scarecrow, but those were like side bosses. The main bad guy, and like the overarching villain is the Joker, and same thing in City. You know, the Joker's part of it. He's a big part of that game, but there's also Hugo Strange. So I think for this first game, we would just do one villain, and then maybe have like, I don't know, Clover has dropped a bunch of his like parasites somewhere, and you have to eradicate them because they'll destroy that environment or whatever, that ecosystem. You know, we could have like those small like side missions that only take a few minutes or maybe like an hour or something, but there should only be one big villain for the first game if we are making multiple games.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of multiplayer, should we have a PvP multiplayer, or the only thing we're getting from multiplayer is maybe co-op at best?
Co-op.
Co-op.
No competitive scene?
Yeah, I would say co-op.
That's better for a fighting game.
Yeah.
That's so much better for I mean, I know Mortal Kombat, their online is pretty competitive, but I don't know anything about like Final Fantasy Online. I don't even know if that's
like an MMO. Final Fantasy Online's an MMO.
Okay.
Or any of the mainline Final Fantasy games. I'd say the closest you could get to like PvP for like an RPG would be Dark Souls Invasions, which have their own kind of appeal. And the reason why that community is so strong is because there is no other game like Dark Souls when it comes to its PvP. Whereas like there's nothing like that in Skyrim, Morrowind, Kings of Amalur. There's nothing like it. So if we're just doing PvPs for co-op, would we be having like 2 Godzillas in co-op, or would we have another monster kind of serving as the player 2 to Godzilla?
Well, this is where... Yeah.
Yeah, Anguirus would be great. Or
Have his
even
number
Mothra.
1.
Angira's
Baby
King Caesar.
Jet Jaguar, maybe.
Maybe. I mean, it really kind of just depends on the story. You know, that what kind of story we're telling.
True.
What's the world building that we're going to be doing? You know, like all the stuff that we're kind of talking about. See, this is when we had our little talk with them about video games. You're like, you and a lot of people I know are like focused on the mechanics of the games, and I'm like, that's not what drives a video game. That's how you play the video game, but that doesn't give you a destination. That doesn't tell you where you're going, right? It's mostly about the story. And so we're trying to figure out all these mechanics, and we don't even know what we want to do as far as the story is concerned.
Well, because I'm saying that because, like, what do we want to do that people are gonna want to play through the game to get to that end of the story? Like, we could
play whatever. People will look at StarCraft. It's one of the most highly competitive online games, and that's an RTS. You've got League of Legends, which is a MOBA. You have a whole host of fighting games which people like to play.
People like playing those games. That's the thing.
Right, but
like an RPG, what would we want to do for an RPG that people are like, I understand how to play this. This is a cool story. Let's do it. Because there needs to be some kind of interest there, because if not, people are gonna kind of do what you do, and that's kind of watch the game, which is nothing wrong with that. But like, if we want people playing, we need to kind of understand like what's things people like to do in terms of just actions. And like how satisfying
people like me that watch it. One, I can't afford a PlayStation, an Xbox, or a Switch, nor could I have found them in the last few months since things happened. But I watch them because one, that's me specifically. The majority of people out there aren't me. Like I watch video games because I'm animating stuff, because I'm doing other things that if I was to sit down and play a video game, to me, I would feel like I would have a lot of like, that's a bunch of time that I could be investing in making a video game rather than playing a video game. So that's why I watch them, because I can watch them. I don't even have to worry about not being able to beat a boss or anything like that. And I can see the whole story. And that's what I play them for. Why do people still buy Halo games? Why do people still play Call of Duty games? Why do people still do like, it's not, the majority of people will buy the game. Like, look at Pokemon. The Sword and Shield has been the best-selling game since its release as far as Pokemon games are concerned. Why do people still play the Pokemon games? They know exactly what kind of game they're getting. You walk into some crazy world, you get some Pokeballs, you throw them at Pokemon, you try to become the champion. Ash Ketchum, got to collect them all. It's the same game over and over, and people still play it. It's not just about the story. But when you know the story of whatever it is that you're doing, you have a direction to go, so you can build the mechanics around that, and people will adapt to those mechanics. Like, look at Doom. Doom's a really good example. It doesn't play like many other first-person shooters. It really doesn't, considering the fact that when you play Call of Duty,
I'd say it doesn't play like any shooter that's on the market, which is why people really loved it. Like if you play like Quake, Dusk, a lot of other stuff like on Steam, maybe this is because I play a lot of games anyway, so like I understand.
You play a lot of games. You're not thinking about the 8-year-old that doesn't have a job that their parents bought a PlayStation for. You know what I'm saying? You got to think about it from that perspective.
Well, in that case, let's we can kind of round this off with the idea of a story. So, would we be going from a certain continuity, or would we want to kind of do what the Pipeworks games did and just have our own continuity?
Own continuity.
So
yeah, I would say our
KaiMo,
own continuity.
It's difficult to build
our own continuity with like homages to like the Showa era or something along those lines.
It's difficult to build off of something that's already been established for, decades. I mean, each new era or reboot, I think has done a pretty decent job of, like 54 is the only one that has any like consequence in this universe. But like this is like things like prequels like get tricky. Like you can completely mess up a continuity, or like with the sequel trilogy for Star Wars. I know you do not. I'm not a big fan of either, but think about what Palpatine's return did. It completely destroys Anakin and Darth Vader's story arc and complete arc. It completely
what I love about that is that even then there's story beats where like depending on how you do them, they could either be interesting or just completely awful, because in the sequel trilogy, how Palpatine returned was really dumb because he just survived. And that ruined Anakin's sacrifice. However, in Legends Dark Empire, Palpatine was dead. It's just his spirit came back, and he was somehow able to manifest. So it wasn't like, well, Anakin always failed. It's that he failed, but for some reason we never expected this to happen, unlike with Disney's kind of bad retcon. So if we're starting from here, we're not doing a specific continuity? Is our continuity a kind of like Heisei Showa Millennium style thing where we have 54 as a base, or do we go Final Wars and there's no 54 continuity at all, aside from maybe a date?
Why do we even have to have 54 involved? Why don't we just go like
Final Wars? Yeah.
Why don't we do what the animation trilogy did and go like completely off script?
Okay, so we have no 54, completely new continuity. Godzilla, how are we portraying Godzilla? Are we going with a classic design with just in a new continuity, or are we designing our own?
I would like to design our own.
Yeah, I think one of the things that every person that's ever made a Godzilla movie, they got to put their own little stamp on them, like how they want them to look or whatever. So that I think we should totally go that direction.
Should make our own. The vanilla game should just be our own. But then again, this is where microtransactions come in with the cosmetics. You can put the 73 eyebrows on and have the 2000 fangs or whatever. I don't know.
Give Godzilla that
his beard
that he was trying to have in the anime trilogy.
Yeah, so have this is again going back to Arkham. I keep bringing this up, but they did a really good job with it. Arkham Knight. Say what you will about the gameplay with the Batmobile, but there was the base bat suit that with the moving chest plates,
and then you have stuff like Kingdom Come Batman.
And then you could have the Adam West Batman, you could have the '89 Batman, you could have a whole bunch of you have the Dark Knight Returns Batman, and then same thing with the Batmobile. You can use the Keaton Mobile. I don't think you can use Mobile. I don't know. That's just what people call it. But the base game should be our own original design. But then people can change it up, do their own cosmetic changes with microtransactions.
Either microtransactions, or you just kind of find them throughout the levels. Because I know.
Yeah, because that's one thing in Mortal Kombat that they do too. At least in Mortal Kombat 11, is that you can unlock certain skins and certain weapons and moves by completing certain tasks. So have the cosmetics be unlockable throughout the game as well. But you can also buy them if you want to be lazy.
And then are we going traditional Godzilla, or are we just kind of going out there in terms of are we doing an Earth or a Shin or something? But not 98, because that's bad. So
it takes place in a very traditional world.
No. Yeah. I will find that picture again. I swear.
Kick him off the stream.
Yeah, don't worry. I am
VHS.
Again, that's the only reason why you're forgiven.
And also, I can do this.
But Adam is back. There you go. But since Adam's back, we are talking about, are we doing a traditional looking Godzilla, or are we going kind of balls to the walls for the sake of this story? We getting a Shin or an Earth up in here? And I'm just waiting for Adam's thoughts, because I know he always has something to say. Speak, boy.
Muted.
Sorry, I had my mic muted. Earth and Shin aren't that different, to be honest. I mean, there's enough differences in them to know that they're different from other iterations. But when you look at their silhouette, it's Godzilla right off the bat.
The most radical Godzilla design is the 2000, because it's so. I mean, Shin has the same design for the dorsal plates. The only thing that's really different is the the chest horn and the tail.
The chest horn, the tail, kind of the spindly arms.
Yeah, but I mean, it's Godzilla with
Exactly.
like 2000s, like that. The elongated snout, the pointed tail, the huge spikes. I mean,
Yeah. So what I'm saying is more like, do we want to steer closer to home, or do we want to is like our stamps on the front on this character? Do we really kind of want to do something that's a little out there?
In terms of origin or in terms of design?
In both, and everyone can kind of give their opinions on that in terms of origins.
I would prefer, something true to the original in terms of origins. That's just me, though.
So, definitely, atomic weapons test, stuff like that.
Prehistoric, prehistoric animal that's, disturbed by nuclear testing.
Mm-hmm. Kim, you pretty much in agreement on that? Because I saw your head.
Yeah, I would say
something
like that also.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the origin story, just like how they did in Godzilla versus King Ghidorah with the Godzilla Soar and the atomic bomb.
Mm-hmm. KaiMo, your thoughts?
I think that could work. Maybe we can take a bit from the comics, because I know one of the IDW comics has Godzilla just as a dinosaur, and then he gets his atomic powers from the bombs. Maybe we can take that idea, and yeah, inside of 2014, where he's always had that ability, where he's always been able to breathe fire. Maybe have that be a human inflicted ability, or human caused ability, I guess.
Adam?
I want to go way off the rails. I don't want the original content, because the thing is, playing off the original continuity or playing off the fact that Godzilla and humans have such a beef with each other has been driven into the ground constantly. It's like, no matter if you keep retelling that story, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Shin, I love the anime trilogy. The MonsterVerse really needs some work. But they're all almost telling the same story, where people think Godzilla bad, kill Godzilla, Godzilla fight people back. You know what I'm saying? I would rather take it and do something with his character that we've never seen before, but that holds some sort of relevance, because when you look at something, we'll use the Showa era, for example. He started off as a bad guy. One could say he was misunderstood. And so was it really malice that made him come on to Tokyo in 1954 and destroy stuff and kill people? Or was he just being Godzilla? Was he just being an animal walking through something? He has no clue what buildings are. He has no clue what an economy is. He has no clue about any of that stuff. And how could we take that concept of Godzilla not being ignorant in the new world that he exists in, and then change it up a little bit, instead of him being created by human and atomic testing? I kind of want to go back to the idea that I was talking about, where he's I don't know. I thought, well, okay, so this is the idea I was kind of thinking about while I was listening to everybody else, was instead of necessarily making Godzilla I don't want to say not the main character, because he is, have a human in some sort of fantasy setting that is literally trying to be his vessel. And it's this human who's learning to become Godzilla, and Godzilla is regarded as a god in the northern lands or something like that. You know what I mean? And the person, the character that is becoming Godzilla and inheriting his powers, and eventually will be able to transform into him completely, kind of think Avatar: The Last Airbender, kind of, sort of. You have him go through the same things that Godzilla went through, as far as being an outcast, somebody who's in a world, or maybe he comes across an empire that stands in between him and the temple of Godzilla, and he's got to get through it. And we meet all these other hosts of characters and people that can be original. Maybe they could be related to other kaiju. and we take them through the same journeys that these other monsters go through, like, or give them the same personality types, like, you know, Gigan's an opportunistic dickhead and Megalon is a dumbass, you know, or Ghidorah is this really maniacal evil kind of person, and we give these different characters their names, and they're all like hosts too, so that way we can have dialogue and people can really kind of really understand, because it's something that I've been experimenting with my Apex series, is there's no humans in it whatsoever. And people are constantly asking questions like, which one's the male, which one's the female, what's Gigan thinking, what's Godzilla thinking, is this like, what's this monster, what's that, like, since there's no dialogue, they're asking more questions, which is something I like. But when you're coming to a game and you're trying to attract the masses, people don't want to think too much. So we got to figure out a way to make Godzilla communicate with the audience directly, right? If it's going to be a story about him, we got to figure out how that's going to work. So I don't necessarily want to, I mean, even in the movies, we don't know what he's thinking. Yeah, there's a couple of times where he kind of like talks or something, but we don't know exactly what Godzilla's thinking except for what we see him do. And half the time that's him destroying a city or fighting a monster. You know what I mean?
I'm thinking with like that idea, would that be probably considered like, because we're talking about like we want to appeal to just obviously the mass audience, but should we be appealing to like what they think Godzilla is, or should we be doing something completely off the rails? Because if it did hypothetically take off, would that then be like how Godzilla's influenced and sort of perceived?
Look at Horizon Zero Dawn is a good example. It is a post-apocalyptic story about the death of humanity as we know it, civilization as we know it, and we somehow survive. And instead of having all these animals running around, we have all these robot animals running around. So it's a different take on the whole scenario. And then when they built the whole story behind why that happens, why there's robot animals, the fact that there is an existential threat in the form of a machine AI called Ares, which is based off of a Roman god, the god of war, that wants to kill everything, right, and eat biomass. Like, that's something you have to take into consideration. People
well, like I would say in that case, it's
well.
like with Horizon doesn't have the baggage of being a franchise that's been around for a long time. Like, for example, if that was the idea of like what a retcon of the future war in Terminator, I think how Horizon Zero Dawn was perceived would definitely be different in that hypothetical scenario there.
Maybe, but the other thing is that we've had all these different versions of stories of Godzilla, the Heisei era, the Showa era, the Millennia era, all these different eras, and they all have different ways of going about telling their story. Even Mechagodzilla has different versions of Mechagodzilla. So
yeah, but they all generally are very similar.
Yeah, I would argue that, because Kiryu is not in any way similar, in my opinion, to the Mechagodzilla of the 70s. He literally goes berserk because he is built off the bones of the 1954.
I would say
Godzilla.
Story implementation is different, but general kind of appearance and therefore perception is all kind of. But like, if we're having like the idea, if we need a human character that follows Godzilla, would it just work better just having a human character there with a connection to Godzilla? So therefore, we have an insight into him instead of like changing him in such a way that maybe it would be interesting. But for the general audience, even then, they'd be like, "That's what Godzilla is? He's kind of like a Power Ranger kind of." Because I'm just wondering, because if we want to appeal to so many people, like that kind of idea, I think would work.
There's a lot of people that know of Godzilla, but they don't know anything about it. And you have to literally pull yourself out of your fanboy space and think about how people will act. Look, Halo was a completely original franchise, right? Star Wars was completely original when it came out, and people loved it. So
yeah, but again, those were new franchises, so that's the thing. They're not like, you could say that again. I'll give you a really good example.
Look at Marvel, the MCU. That's not new. That shit's been around for decades, and they retold the stories. they even replaced people like that. They took people in and out of the story that weren't even supposed to be in there. Like I think one of the original members of the Avengers was someone from the Fantastic Four, and he wasn't even in it. You know what I mean? What's his name? The stretchy guy.
Did
Oh,
Mr.
I forgot
Studios
his
have
name.
the
No,
rights
Mr.
to
Fantastic was always
Four?
part of the Fantastic Four.
No, but I think he was one of the original Avengers members.
No, it was Ant-Man. Ant-Man was one of the original Avengers. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, Hank Pym. Because remember, Scott Lang is the second Ant-Man. It was Hank Pym who was like the original Ant-Man who was part of the Avengers.
Hang on. Now you're making me look this. My point is, the MCU changed things from the way the original was.
Similar. That's the thing. Like how Captain America is generally.
So what we keep the same is how Godzilla's perceived, like how his character is. Like he is a force of nature, right?
So just perception, not appearance.
Right. No, because we're sitting here talking about creating our own designs.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just you have to look at the whole thing. Like it's not just about the appearance. It's also about how are we going to tell this story in such a way that it hasn't been burned into the ground. How many times do we have to see tanks and planes fail against the Godzilla?
Mm. Well, then that comes. Well, if that's the case, if like we're going sort of like out here, how are we going to work with like enemies in terms of how that affects the story?
We got to figure out the story first.
Well, because again, if we're going to talk about like if we're dealing with humans, that's been definitely done to death, especially in video games. That's the thing.
So there's an animated show on YouTube called Godzilla Bonds of Blood or something like that.
Oh, I know that. I know what you're talking about.
He's taking a whole different approach to, and it's a really cool original story. I really wish he would hurry up and make the next freaking video.
Honestly,
I doubt he watches my stuff.
But he's got this human cast of characters, and they're in this weird setting. I don't know if it's prehistoric or if it's just a whole nother world in general. But all the monsters,
another world.
Like Godzilla looks different, Anguirus looks different, Mechagodzilla looks different. Like all these different. Rodan looks different. They all look different. Even Gabara. Gabara looks. Man, I would take his version of Gabara over the original Toho design any day of the week. Wow. But that's my point. Like, people, first off, the Godzilla fan base is loving it. They want to see more of that stuff. They're liking what I'm doing, which isn't traditional Godzilla, period. Mine is a world where all these creatures exist without humans. And it's totally changing up the dynamic of stuff. And I don't think that the mainstream audience would care if it was to the T about 1954 and past iterations, as long as the gameplay was fun and the story was good. That's all that really matters at the end of the day. So if you want to know like how we're going to do stuff, we gotta do some world building. We gotta settle on, is this going to be in a fantasy setting or is it going to be in a modern setting? If we're going to go modern, I'm afraid that we're going to get another King of the Monsters debacle where it's really fast and
well, I'd say the thing is that if we're doing a modern setting in a video game, we also have the luxury of having a lot more time on our hands that a movie will not allow. Because King of the Monsters had to tell its story within the relation of like that of a movie's screen time length, unlike a video game where we'll have a lot more time to do anything, like God of War story versus King of the Monsters.
Hang on. So King of the Monsters was 2 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
So was every Star Wars movie ever made. King of the Monsters, for as awesome as the special effects were, had really bad storytelling and really bad character development. And they pushed through it so freaking fast that not the human characters could get good development. Not even the monsters could really get good development. It was literally a summer spectacle, and that's all that movie ever was. If they wanted to tell a good story and tell something deep, I mean, there could have been a lot more scenes, like when Shirazawa is like touching Godzilla and being like, "Goodbye, my old friend." Like that was an emotional scene that could have been a lot more dramatic. You know what I mean? It could have It could have made audiences cry if they could have done it right, but they didn't. And that's what upsets me about doing something in a modern setting and then trying to shoehorn all of the stuff in. Yeah, you're right. With the game, we have a little bit more time.
We have a lot more time.
Yeah, we have a lot more time. But if we do it in the modern setting, I feel like if we did a more traditional Godzilla story, we would have to stick to a more traditional Godzilla. We would have to stick to a more traditional design, a more recognizable story. He would still be a prehistoric dinosaur instead of some sort of weird, crazy god deity. You know what I mean? Like you could do so much more with it if you took him out of the normal setting that he's in. But you can tell the same story in a different setting.
I guess that makes sense, generally. So I think, like, overall, we've essentially covered everything aside from just, like, making a story completely, which we would need a full, like, live stream just to do that, and we would need, like, a whole set of writers. But, like, I think, like, the main things we kind of touched upon is that we would want a big budget, of course, obviously a recognizable company so a lot of people knows what's up. No like real big multiplayer, just co-op if anything, and a Godzilla that kind of fits into like the general perception of Godzilla, and then whatever we do with that is whatever we do with it, kind of generally. Or we can go super safe and do a Godzilla fighter from NetherRealm, which I'm also fine with as well, which I think could work too.
Right.
Have that be the American-made game.
Just have just two different games releasing at the same time.
Sure. Why not?
Has that ever happened? Has there ever been a franchise that had like two games releasing around the same time?
I don't think so.
Anything that was like it was two different console games.
I know Sega, in all their infinite wisdom in making horrible decisions, they had they had an American-made Sonic game, like Sonic Rise of Lyric, I think it was called.
Oh yeah.
But then they were going to make their own Sonic series at the same time, because like it would be the Japanese Sonic and the American Sonic. So I mean, that didn't turn out all that great. Obviously, Sega, like I said, is a master of decision making. So, Adam, you're deriving a lot of pleasure from my sarcasm.
When I first started, like outside of Nintendo, which was the only console at the time, like when you had the next gen, which was like Sega and Super Nintendo, my parents got me a Sega. So,
okay.
And Sega doesn't exist anymore. Yeah.
Oh, they don't make hardware anymore. They make games, but yeah.
Sonic at this point is essentially just a Nintendo second party character.
Pretty much. But you know, so maybe you could just chalk that decision of having an American Sonic and a Japanese Sonic just being Sega being idiots. Own, yeah. And you know, maybe it could work with Godzilla. But Toho doesn't exactly like it's not great at all to have two brands competing, or I mean two of the same brand, like two products from the same brand competing at the same time. Because I know Capcom also with Street Fighter and Tekken, like they released a Street Fighter game and then a Tekken game like a few months later, and that screwed one of those
Tekken
games.
Bombed.
Which one? Tekken 7?
No. It was Street Fighter versus Tekken, which was the Capcom one, and then Tekken versus Street Fighter, which instead of it being a 2D like normal Capcom game, they tried to make it like a Tekken game with Ryu and Ken and all that.
Oh yeah.
Bombed.
So, you know, I don't know if you know, obviously one would be more popular in Japan and the other would be more popular in the US. But I don't know if that's a great business decision to have two products using the same license competing against each other in the same market.
The thing with movies is that like you can release them and then they come out, unlike games where there's just sort of they come out and people are consecutively playing them past like their original lifetime. Yeah. And like that's the reason like why like every COD game after the new one comes out, regardless of like features getting replaced or taken out, everyone moves to the new one after the other ones come out.
What was the lapse in time between the release of the last Planet Eater and King of the Monsters?
I can check that right now.
6 months.
6
6
months.
Was it 6 months? Yeah, because
Like, well, at least in America, it came out in November, and then King of the Monsters came out in May. So like 7-8 months.
Okay.
7 months, I think.
So I mean, that is an example of Toho willing to, have.
Although I'm pretty sure
simultaneous.
I'm pretty sure Toho has come out saying that they released the anime series to keep interest in
Japan.
Godzilla.
Yeah.
In Japan, at least, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well,
that's true.
when you look at the numbers of the MonsterVerse as a whole in Japan, it's been abysmal. Those movies haven't even made an average budget back in Japan. Like nobody even knows they exist. And I know this because we
Andres.
we know people that live there, and nobody knows about King of the Monsters, Godzilla, or Legendary Godzilla. They just know Shin Godzilla. Like Shin Godzilla is the big thing.
Yeah, they've just really been kind of pushing Shin Godzilla because I just want to look at something real quick. I mean, what was Planet Eater's budget again?
I don't know. I don't know the budgets. I don't know the financial details of those movies.
They weren't very high. I know that.
Yeah.
Compared to like live action movies.
Mm, I'm checking it right now. The only thing I've always ever been able to find when it came to Planet Eater was what it made, and that was 1.5 million. And that's USD, of course, not yen. I'm not sure what the yen is, and I have no interest to know because of how much like yen are in a dollar.
Yeah.
It's just 100 yen.
It's like 100
it's
yen.
100 to the dollar. So add 2 zeros to that.
Generally, it's like
And 150 million is what it made.
Okay, I just looked up the box office in Japan for 2014 and King of the Monsters. 2014 almost made 30 million in Japan, and King of the Monsters was just shy of 25 million.
Their average film in Japan is like 75 million.
For their budget?
No. They're like what they make at the box office.
Oh,
You're
okay.
looking at budget or you're looking at box office?
I'm looking at, well, for the box office for 2014 and King of the Monsters.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
then
what's it called? Planet Eater had no outside
Japan.
box office stuff, and
Yeah.
we lost Ian.
Well, that's because they put it directly onto Netflix.
Yeah, which again, I don't know why they did that, because like some people saw it, some people didn't. Like interest for it was like really good when Planet of the Monsters first came out, and then I saw nothing for Sitting on the Edge of Battle, and then I saw one thing for Planet Eater.
Well, I know Matt said that when he was there for Planet of the Monsters, there's promotion everywhere for that movie. But then when he went subsequently for City and Planet Eater, he saw almost nothing.
Yeah. That'd be interesting just to research what was going on at the time, but we are just about to hit 2 hours and
2.5.
minutes. Yeah.
Which
I'd say, like, aside from Adam, for Kim, Eric, KaiMo, and of course Ian, who had to go, I saw in the private chat. I thank you all for being here. And
Thanks for having us.
oh, no problem. And since this is coming to the end of it all, I will be updating the description to have all your guys' socials and stuff so people can find you from there. But of course, this is the shilling hour. So, well, ladies first always. Kim, shill your stuff. Just where can everyone find you and your content?
You can find me everywhere. My name is KaijuKim. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I kind of hang out on Reddit sometimes. I'm kind of a lurker. I put some of my videos there. I put out a new video every Tuesday, or at least I try to. I'm might slow down a little my upload schedule a little bit because things are getting a little crazy in my life right now. But yeah, I like I said at the beginning, I am reviewing the Gamera trilogy right now. So if you're interested in that, subscribe and follow me.
Thank you. And Eric, where can people find you, my man?
All right, so for me, you can just find me on YouTube, EricZilla1999, as well as my Instagram, Twitter, and yeah, just those two in particular, as well as and DeviantArt as well. It's on DeviantArt, it's EricZilla, but you can find me there if you want to see some drawings or comics and all that. Like for me on my channel, I usually upload like occasionally, but since I'm back at school and all that, it's kind of been slow. But I have some videos planned up, and again, like I mentioned, I have I have a fan series, Godzilla and Ultraman Gaiden, and if you're interested in some of those, you can just check it out. And yeah, it's pretty much.
I already see what KaiMo's got lined up, so I'm gonna skip him.
Oh damn, you can see that.
Yeah, I'm dying. I can't.
My name's Adam. I run Scrye Productions here on YouTube. There's the YouTube at Scrye Official. Find me on Twitter at Scrye Official, although I don't get on that toxic website that much anymore. I make animations, I make audio dramas, and I make music, all original stuff. Some of it's, remakes of Godzilla stuff. Right now, it's mostly Godzilla, but I really do plan on branching off into other things in the future, some more original animations and stuff. And you can support me on Patreon. And if you do, you also support Draco Azul, which is Andreas's comic, because I'm working on a animated series for him. We're concepting things right now. It's in the beginning stages of the process, but in order for us to further expand productions, kind of need a budget, and me working at a little grocery store ain't gonna cut it. So if you want to help support the channel, you can check that out there. Otherwise, just go check out Scrye Productions. I've got the Godzilla Apex series. We're coming up on the end of season 1. We're about to hit episode 10 next week. And then we got 2 more episodes, and that'll be the end of season 1. And then I'm going to make a bunch of follow-up videos to that as I work on season 2 and some other projects. And then, I think that's pretty much it. You can follow me on Instagram too, Scrye Productions. But I've got like 2 posts on Instagram. I'm really bad at social media. So.
And then finally, this guy.
Oh, you can see my cat in the background. Hi, Egon. You can follow me at KaiMo, youtube.com/KaiMo Films. I do stop motion animations. Like I said, they take a long time to make, so they don't come out on a very regular basis. However, I do try. Unfortunately, like 3 projects that I had, like in partial forms of completion, something has either broken or like gotten deleted or wiped or something. So no big projects coming up anytime soon. However, I can get some small stuff up. And you can follow me on Instagram at KaiMo Films Official. And I have a Letterboxd as well, which you can find in the About page of my channel. So, yay.
And then, of course, for myself, you can find me here on my YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, where I do a lot of my posting. I kind of lurk on Twitter sometimes, but I don't want to get canceled, so I try to keep myself off there as often as I can. And I need to start uploading stuff on DeviantArt again. And you can kind of follow me. I'm going to be posting a lot more of my stuff regarding my own series, Zokra, War on Heaven and Earth, and sort of what's going on with that. But without further ado, guys, thank you all for watching for this long. And as always, I am Zimzilla, and I'll see you guys next time. Here's a poke. Bye, all.